Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second meeting in July. Madam Clerk, would you please read the adequate notice of a compliance statement?
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the City Clerk's office in preparation of the Council Annual Meeting Notice dated January 3rd, 2019, which was properly distributed and posted per statutory requirements. Please be advised that fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room. The City has a listening system to assist the hearing impaired. If anyone needs hearing assistance, please obtain the system at the dais and return it thereafter.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Here.
Ms. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Gould?
Here.
Ms. Little?
Here.
Mr. McTiernan?
Here.
Mr. Vartan?
Here.
President Naidoo.
Here. And now I'd like to call on Jeremy Betts to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Jeremy, come on up.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jeremy. Madam Clerk, would you please read the notices regarding closed session, hearings, and comments?
A closed session meeting is authorized by state statute, was announced and held prior to the start of this meeting, and the known items for discussion were listed on the published closed session agenda. Please be advised that council meetings are broadcast live on Comcast Channel 36 and Verizon Channel 30, and rebroadcast on Thursdays and Saturdays on HTTV on Comcast 36 and Verizon 33. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern. Clearly state your name and address, spell your last name, and speak into the podium microphone so that your comments can be understood by all and properly recorded. Whenever an audience or council member reads from a prepared statement, please give or email a copy to the City Clerk's office at rlicatis@cityofsummit.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to approximately 3 minutes or so in length. Unless you are using an electronic device to follow the meeting agenda or need it for professional emergency contact purposes, please turn it off. Thank you.
Thank you. On to minutes for approval. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of regular and closed session of July 9th, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to reports, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, everyone. I'm sure you all, as we all are, a little bit happier that it's a little less hot than it used to be last couple of days and less humid. So welcome to this evening, and the air conditioning is working, so that's a good thing. First of all, National Night Out is a really special night in Summit, and the Summit Police Department and the Department of Community Programs are joining thousands of communities across the United States to host Summit's annual National Night Out Against Crime on Tuesday, August 6th, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on the Village Green, which is of course, we all know where the Village Green is. National Night Out provides a chance for community members to come together to view displays and demonstrations by Union County SWAT, New Jersey State Police, the FBI, and K-9, along with Summit Police, Fire, EMS, and Public Works. There will be food trucks, bounce houses, a Dunk-A-Cop tank to benefit an area family, and I must say that Dunk-A-Cop tank is the most popular thing in the evening. Lots of amusements and entertainment beginning at 6 p.m., followed by the annual Blessing of the Badges at 7 p.m. Free hot dogs will be provided by the Summit PAL food cart, and Summit's 2019 National Night Out is sponsored by Overlook Medical Center, Sunshine Rehabilitation Center, Paul Ippolito Memorial, and the Summit PAL. In the event of rain, National Night Out Against Crime will be rescheduled to Wednesday, August 7th. If you need any more information, please go to the city website, Community Programs website, summitcommunityprograms.com. As we all know, over the past few weeks, Summit has experienced a number of challenges from severe weather. Dispatch, police, fire, EMS, and Public Works have received and responded to hundreds of calls. I want to express my sincere appreciation for the hard work that goes into keeping the citizens of Summit safe and informed. The number of ongoing power outages these past few weeks is also a source of concern for all elected officials and the city administrators. We have asked JCP&L to explain the cause of the outages and share information on what they are doing to improve the resiliency of the power grid. I'll report back once we have that important information from JCP&L, and I want to assure the community that we are committed to furthering improvements to JCP&L's service. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On to our Administrator, Michael Rogers.
Thank you, Council President. As the council knows, and some of you in the audience is also aware, our city organization uses a system called SeeClickFix. It's a platform for citizen requests and employee workflow management. I'm proud to report that Summit topped the 10 most engaged and responsive list of national SeeClickFix partners in the second quarter of 2019. Thank you to the Department of Community Services and all departments who respond to citizen requests for your responsiveness to stakeholder concerns through the system. So thanks again. Update on city capital projects, the Linden and Oakland Place and Laurel Avenue and Larned Road improvement projects will begin later this week, weather permitting. The construction plans include storm sewer installation and repair of sewer inlets, curbs, and sidewalks. Following repair work, roads will be milled and paved. The work is anticipated to last several weeks. While roads are closed for repairs, police officers will be on site to direct traffic. Emergency vehicles will have access at all times. The Tier Garage with entrances on Maple Street and Springfield Avenue will be closed for power washing and painting from Friday, July 26 at 7 p.m. to Sunday, July 28 at 10 p.m. The alley from Maple Street to the garage may be closed intermittently. The garage will be closed again from Friday, August 2nd at 7 p.m. to Sunday, August 4th at 10 p.m. to complete painting work. For more information on where to park while the Tier Garage is closed, please visit cityofsummit.org/parking or call the Parking Services Agency at 908-522-5100. Lastly, the parking lot behind CBS will be closed from Thursday, August 8th to Monday, August 12th for milling, paving, and painting of parking spots, weather permitting, of course. Downtown employees and people who park overnight in the lot are advised to park in other locations. Again, please go to cityofsummit.org/parking for more information and a detailed map of parking locations. That's all I have for this evening, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you. And for my Council President's report, I just would like, as the Mayor said, recently we've had very rough weather that has required a lot of services from all of our folks in the different departments, from DPW, DCS, police, and fire. And I'd just like to invite the fire chief, because I know there's been a lot of incidents where the fire department has gone out there, just to give a report to all of us about what their activities have been. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Council President. Appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. As always, any major event in Summit, it's a whole, every department in Summit is involved with it, police, fire, EMS, with a group effort. But we had an event on the 17th that brought a lot of rain in a short amount of time. From start to finish, it lasted a little under 5 hours. During that time, the Mountain Valley Communications Center answered over 1,000 calls and dispatched over 360 emergency calls between police, fire, and EMS. On a local level, the Summit Fire Department, during that time on Thursday, we responded to over 53 calls. A lot of flash flooding. We had about 7 swiftwater rescues throughout town. A lot of streets got flooded. We had to go when people were trapped in their vehicles. We also had a lot of electrical issues. A lot of basements in town and around residents got flooded. 4 feet of water inside there caused a lot of gas problems, a lot of electrical problems. We had a couple smaller fires we quickly mitigated. We also had a lot of lightning strikes for the event that happened yesterday. Yesterday's more of a wind lightning event. That caused a couple lightning strikes in town. A couple of trees came down. We had some small spotty power outages around town, nothing long-term. But all in all, we had about 83 calls between Thursday's storm event and yesterday's storm event from the fire department's end. So, but like again, it was always a great effort between police, fire, and EMS to mitigate the problems in town. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Yep.
Thank you. We're going to do one thing that's not on the agenda tonight. We have our city treasurer, Marge Gerba, who's retiring. And I'm going to now turn it over to the mayor to speak about that. Madam
Join me up here, March.
Mayor, you want me-
Come with me. Many of you, probably some of you have seen Marge come up here and answer questions that are arcane to most of you, and frankly sometimes to us, about the details of the city budget and the workings of bond issues and so on and so forth. Marge has been with the city for 8 years, stepped in at a time of a little bit of flux, and there were a lot of things that needed to be cared for and details focused upon, and Marge stepped in and did an incredible good job. We were speaking a little bit earlier this evening that whenever you ask Marge a question, no matter how stupid the question might be, she answers honestly with a smile and very professionally and doesn't make you feel like you're an idiot. So this is really a marvelous trait, and you are the consummate professional. We are so grateful to you for all the time that you have spent in our city, and you've brought us to, we've had a AAA rating, but now we are we're free of comments because of all the work that you've done and everything that you've done. So I can't thank you enough. I know I speak on behalf of council, we're very proud of our city, but we are where we are right now in many respects because of you. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so, so much.
I love doing
A tradition when a very valued colleague leaves our community as a working person. Of course, you'll still be here. You don't live too far. We want to see you. We give you a chair here. And so this is for you, and it will have Margaret V. Gerba, 8 years of service, city treasurer, 2000 and 2019. So, where do you want to?
Now you want to sit on the floor.
Yeah, of course.
Say budget.
I like AAA better.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Absolutely, pleasure working with you.
Thank you. Yours is in the box.
We're going to also do a little bit of comments from both the former and current chair of the Finance Committee. So I'll let the former chair go first, Mike McTiernan, and then I'll have the current chair. Beth, let's go.
You put me on the spot, but it's an easy spot to be on because I was chair of finance for 3 years and on the committee for another 2. So I actually saw Marge while she was working in the department, and we, as the mayor alluded to, we had some changes that happened in the department, and it was really, really easy to pick a replacement for our former treasurer because everyone we spoke to spoke so highly of the person right under our noses. And we all recognized that and made a really great decision, I believe, for Summit. Marge has done nothing but exceed expectations since. So as the mayor said, pleasure to work with, always came prepared, and always was the type of person who, dealing with arcane facts, made you understand how it worked. Because numbers are tough, municipal numbers are even harder. It's a language all its own, and Marge speaks it fluently. And she was great to work with professionally, and personally, I'm going to miss her as well. So thank you, Marge.
Beth?
Thank you, Council President. That's a good segue into what I was going to say as well. As current chair of the Finance Department, I've had the pleasure of working with Marge through my time on council, and I'm very lucky to have had her as a mentor on the Finance Committee. But in interviewing new candidates to replace Marge, every single one of them said that usually they come into an interview and talk about all the things they would change and do better. And they said they really couldn't do that here in Summit because everything was so well run. And then Marge has done such a wonderful job in her position here in Summit. So that was a real tribute to you, that your reputation goes well beyond the city limits of Summit, and everyone knows what a wonderful job you do. But beyond the kind of technical aspects of how well you do your job, you are unendingly patient, kind, and such incredible attention to detail, but in such a lovely way. And it's been just unmitigated pleasure working with you through this time. We are absolutely going to miss you. We wish you all the best.
Michael?
I wasn't planning, thank you, Council President. I wasn't planning on saying anything, but I would be kind of crappy for me not to say anything to you.
That's a great
Since
introduction there, Michael.
we've worked very, very closely over the last 4 years, and I came into the city organization, and Marge was stepping into that role as an acting CFO. So we had a big learning curve we had to go through together, and we made some positive changes while we worked together. Thank you for tolerating me, and thank you. This is a person who truly came to work every day, not because she had to, because she truly enjoyed what she did. So I thank you for that experience, and I wish you the best in your retirement. Thanks, Marge.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, we'll move now to presentations. We have two presentations tonight, the first of which is from the Economic Development Committee, and I'd ask the chair, Jonathan Betts, to come on up. Jonathan.
That's set up. All right, thank you, Council President. Give me just 1 second to load this up here. Okay, so as I think most people on council know, the Economic Development Advisory Committee is one of the newest in council or in city government. We've been in existence for about a year after having been created in April of 2018. What I really want to do tonight is just present a snapshot of progress so far. As I think, again, everybody knows, there was a detailed report in the agenda materials for tonight's meeting that goes into a lot more depth than we have necessarily the time to go into. It especially covers a lot of the diligence and research that this group has done to get to some of the conclusions that you're going to see tonight. So with that as context, I'm planning to take 10, 15 minutes, have a few minutes for questions, and then that you will go on your way. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay, outstanding. So, quick agenda. I want to, make sure we're all aligned on why this group is in place, what we've learned in our first year of doing some research, what we see as the opportunity, and what our action plan is going forward through the rest of 2019. These are the folks who have been appointed to council or have been appointed to the committee, rather, by council. Many of them are here tonight. A variety of backgrounds in volunteering around town, in different industries, including the real estate industry, the investment industry. But just as a reminder, this is who your commission is. So this is the key slide to understand as to why there's a need for this group, and especially why there's a need for this group as compared to some of the other groups in town that we'll talk about. If we look at the city's budget each year, the statistics as we understand them are that about 20% of the city's revenues comes from commercial ratables, sources other than, real estate taxes primarily that citizens are paying. And then if you take that 20% and blow it out and look at where it's coming from, 70% of that comes from one employer, that's Celgene. So we have, from just a pure investment perspective, we're not getting enough from this stream of revenue, and what we're getting is very sensitive to the decisions of one corporation. That's not a particularly stable situation from where we sit. So with that set of statistics as framing, the EDC has adopted the mission to advise Common Council. We are not endowed with any regulatory capability on our own. We exist to advise on how to increase and diversify that revenue stream. So to go back, basically we want to grow the yellow slice on the left so that we have a greater source of revenue coming from commercial ratables. And we want to grow the yellow slice on the right so that more employers other than just the largest one in town are contributing to that revenue stream. And the last thing, and I want to make this really important, is that all of this should happen in the context of maintaining the quality of life in Summit. As I said, everybody on this group has deep roots in town. We very frequently say we don't want to turn Summit into Morristown. Nothing against Morristown, but that's, sorry, Michael.
There's only one person on the dais
Yeah,
who could
yeah.
possibly object to that.
But we're not looking to propose things that change what it is that makes Summit the town that we've all chosen to live in and raise families here. There are a lot of efforts where we get questions about how this group fits in relative to those groups. And we've made a very conscious effort to stay out of those swim lanes. So for example, Summit Downtown focuses a lot on recruiting street-level retail. That's not a problem that needs another set of voices in the room, right? The zoning board and the planning board have clear charters. We've identified opportunities to work with some of those groups on specific efforts, but again, we're trying to find a new space, primarily around what we think is an opportunity for longer-term strategic thinking. So, as detailed in the report, and you can read it if you haven't already, we've talked with a lot of stakeholders throughout town, investors, residents, business owners, trying to figure out, what are the kinds of opportunities that exist for this group. And there's three main takeaways that I want to share. One is, if you're thinking about locating your business in Summit, the town does nothing to present a clear, consistent message as to why Summit is the right place for you to do business. So we'll talk in a minute about some of the statistics about how well we're doing at drawing businesses to town, but we actually have a big opportunity to go further there. Neighborhood business districts are a big opportunity. We'll get into that. And then also demand is very high for downtown space, especially commercial space downtown. So where we have marketing materials about locating a business in Summit, they're primarily around, again, the street level retail. That's in large part a lot of the work out of SDI. We've done a fair amount of benchmarking against similar kinds of communities. We've looked at Montclair, we've looked at Princeton, we've looked at communities further afield. Portsmouth, Maine was one that we looked at. And you can see very clearly that a lot of towns of our size and scale are putting information out there to help make clear to a potential business tenant, this is why this is the right place for you to have your business. Let's talk about neighborhood business districts. This is something that comes out really very clearly from the 2016 master plan, and you can't quite see it at the size of this presentation, but that's a screenshot of, I think it's objective 2.10 of the 2016 master plan, which calls out very specifically that town should make some investment in examining the NBDs in a very targeted way. There are some, highlighted opportunities that the master plan called out around walkability, design standards, those sorts of things. But we've taken that as an opportunity really just to ask the question of, what should be happening with the NBDs? What do the residents in and around the NBDs want to see out of those areas? So there was actually commissioned by the city a study specifically of the Ashwood and Broad NBD. And I want to point this out in a spirit of transparency because this report made specific recommendations. It is not the position of this group that any of those recommendations are what we should be pursuing at this point. We want to proceed very carefully with a lot of input from the community, but I wouldn't want anybody to find out that we weren't aware of this report, that we were doing anything to obscure visibility of it. It exists, it's out there, it's an interesting read. It is not the roadmap, it is not the blueprint for what this group is considering. And again, you can sort of see some of the things that they called out, and we could debate at length whether any of these are actually good ideas. They're talking about, possibly raising the maximum building size, possibly allowing greater lot coverage. Again, I think the merits of those are subject to, what is the community actually looking for. And then lastly, let's talk about demand for commercial space. These are amazing numbers, right? In every class of commercial real estate that you can look at, and the Summit vacancy rate is across all of downtown all of Summit when we look at these. we've tried to pull numbers. We're not exactly sure, but it may be the case that there's actually no Class A real estate in the CRBD today. So that number is looking at spaces like the Celgene campus, the newer building right across the street here. That's where you're getting the Class A space in town. So this is really good, and it works really well in our favor. But the flip side of this is we've heard very clearly that there's a lot of interest in making more investment in downtown. And when you consider the fact that the current zoning requirements, and again, not changing anything, the current zoning requirements allow for the CRBD to be built to 300% of FAR, Florida Area Ratio. What that means is every building in the CRBD that's not built to that level represents, an opportunity to create more space where we could expect to see similar kinds of vacancy rates. Some of the demographics that we see that drive that very low vacancy rate, we see global professional services firms love locating in town. They find the appeal of the train to be quite high. The rates that people are able to charge are competitive with the kinds of rates that high-quality buildings in Jersey City are able to charge, which speaks really highly to the appeal of Summit. One thing that it does work as a challenge to locating in downtown is the floor footprint. We've got a lot of older buildings with smaller footprints, and we're hearing that people want to see larger spaces available. Talked about downtown. And then this last point is really, I think, the big riddle that's facing this group and the thing that's going to require a lot more diligence. We've heard, I've had conversations with with developers directly saying, I have a giant bucket of money that I'm ready to invest, and the people that own the buildings downtown don't want to take on that capital because they don't want to, change the ownership structure of whether it's a trust or whatever other entity owns that building. And so we are going to, have to figure out some way to encourage the existing landowners to, whether it's by taking on new investment or investing some of their own capital, we will not realize the opportunity of building out more of downtown until they're willing to do the development. And you'll see in the action plan, we want to understand that more. So, this is, recapping in some ways a lot of things you've already heard me say. We think we can, capitalize on the already existing appeal. We think we can actually put together detailed marketing materials that portray a consistent message. We can work with residents and communities in and around the neighborhood business districts to identify ways to support their goals. And we can continue to hack away at the problem of how do we get more commercial real estate developed in the CRBD. This is basically what I just said. So let's talk about what that means in terms of an action plan for the rest of this year. There's a marketing subgroup that's done tremendous work. I talked about some of the benchmarking. They also ran a survey with businesses downtown, and they've identified a set of emerging themes about the message that we can portray about Summit to the world, to potential clients. These probably aren't surprising to anybody who's been in Summit for a while, but the strength of the city, the fiscal strength, the quality of the infrastructure, the vibrant community, especially how highly educated the community is, and the level of civic engagement in Summit is something that we think is really strong. We're planning to target getting something live on some sort of website, maybe some pamphlets by the end of this year. In terms of the NBDs, we want to start small and targeted. So we're going to start with the Ashwood and Broad neighborhood business district. And I apologize, there's a mistake on the last bullet on this slide is incomplete. But we're targeting September to host an open community meeting, probably at the rec center, where we'd invite members of that community and get their feedback on the kinds of businesses they see in the NBD today, the kinds of businesses they'd like to see, other issues that might be within the scope of the Economic Development Commission. And then lastly, we need to keep doing diligence on, what is driving the motivations of the landowners in the CRBD? What kinds of things would make additional investment more appealing to them? So, That's it? I don't know exactly how I did on time.
You did good, John.
Okay, all right, thank you. What questions can I answer?
Wait, let's, first of all, I want to also just recognize and thank the members of your committee who are back there, right? So if you guys wouldn't mind standing up, I see Jeff Wagenbach, Jeff Schaefer, Julie Keenan, Danny O'Sullivan. Thank you all very much. And
Thank
with
you, David.
that, I will open it up for folks on council to ask questions, and then we can have residents ask any questions that they would like. Matt?
Thank you, Jonathan. That was a really excellent presentation. I appreciate the work that went into it. I have two questions. My first is, I love that you're talking about the media you're going to put together for the rollout, and I think that's really smart to recruit more. Of course, our problem is we can recruit people, we don't have anywhere to put them, I think. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so there's a subtle message there. So one thing is, we have heard that, especially for local offices of global firms, that getting the approvals for why are we paying as much to be in this little town I've never heard of as we would pay to be in Jersey City. And so we think one of the forms that marketing set of materials may take is actually, this is what to send to the CFO in San Francisco as to why you're going to pay $50 a square foot in Summit, New Jersey. The other thing is trying to boost the market dynamics a little bit, right? So if we believe that if we can help increase demand, that may actually help create greater appetite for increasing supply, if that makes sense.
Right.
So if you're a landowner and you have a one-story building and the opportunity to build to 3, if you're seeing the vacancy rates staying consistently low, if you're seeing the rents consistently go up, over time it should get harder and harder and harder to say no to investing additional capital.
Right, that's a good answer. And I imagine that the redevelopment could, we want to create the demand for the redevelopment as well, so we'd want to work that timing out. Can you envision, after we get the materials ready, some kind of a campaign paid media spend and where we would put it?
Yeah, so I don't want to speak too much out of turn for Karoom Malik, who's heading our marketing efforts and is unfortunately out of town this week tonight and not able to join us. He's an incredibly strong marketer, and I know that paid spend is something that is on his option set. But we're still nailing down the exact messaging before getting to an actual execution plan.
Right.
So watch this space, and I'd be happy to connect you offline with Karoom to get more details on his thinking.
Thank you. And my last question, obviously, since I live right there, the NBD at Morris Avenue and Butler around there by Washington School is near and dear to my heart. Did you guys look at that?
Yeah, so that NBD, which sort of runs, basically from Butler all the way down to River Road, and the one over at Ashwood and Broad, are probably the 2 largest in all of town. There's a couple of other small ones. One of the things that distinguishes the one where you are is there's already been a lot more organic investment. So the plaza that went in about 10 years ago at, is it Plain Street?
Yes.
Yeah, right. And so one of the questions, again, sort of conundrums that we wonder about is, is the Ashwood and Broad NBD getting a level of investment that's on par with, the NBD where you live? And if not, what might be causing friction in that regard? Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I guess I'm just lobbying for more.
Right. Yeah.
More
So also
attention
just
paid
in terms
to-
of being strategic about execution, I think in terms of looking at the capacity we have, trying to do all, it's either 4 or 5 at once, I think would be a recipe for taking on too much and failing. So I'd like to start with 1. We've picked 1 as a target for first engagement, and then let's figure out what works. And I think it's also going to be a different set of desires and probably a different set of solutions for each one of these, because they are very different. Like if you look at the one by the Little Kings, there's a train station right there. I think that's going to have a very different impact on what's appropriate to that as compared to where you are, where it's an access to 24, different kinds of traffic patterns, those sorts of things.
Right. Okay, well, again, thank you for the great presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Anybody else? Nora?
Yes.
So thank you very much, and thank you to everyone else. And Paul Formicelli just walked in, another member of the committee, so thank you. I really think it's intriguing about putting some time and attention into the MBDs. But you're right. I mean, the culture and the community at Ashwood and Broad is significantly different than Morris and Butler. So I really encourage you to do that community outreach and have that meeting and try to get as many of the neighbors in there to find out what do they want. It's almost like it's a little community, and it needs to be treated as such.
Absolutely.
So I think that's important. So, but thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
I think all this advice and information, we have a wealth. I'm always saying we have a wealth of volunteers in our community, and we need to tap into the people that are interested and smart and ready to put their time and effort into it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from members of council? I'm going to open up to the public. Is there any member of the public who would like to ask a question about the Economic Development Committee? Okay. Oh, yes. Come on up, Alejandro.
Alejandra Gurevich from 137
Just
Seacrest
lower the
Avenue.
mic.
Yes,
Yeah.
Alejandra Gurevich. I was wondering if you can expand a little bit on what the ideas might be for the area of Ashwood Avenue, since you mentioned it, or if there's anything that...
So I really can't tell you what ideas there are because I don't think we've done an appropriate level of community engagement. Again, in the spirit of transparency, we wanted to make it part of this report tonight that we are going to do that engagement so that it's now a matter of public record. Anybody who's following the city website knows that this group is going to engage in that. We're going to do flyers and community outreach to make sure that people know when we're having a meeting. I will tell you, anecdotally, some things that I've heard from people in that community, that, it is an area which has a lot of uses that we would describe as light industrial. So there's landscapers, there's, auto repair shops, body shops. A lot of those, I believe, are fantastic businesses, and they're providing services that are key to the entire community of Summit. At the same time, I've also heard from people in that area that those aren't necessarily serving the needs of that community. And so I think that's a tension that, maybe some of the land uses in place today aren't in the best interests of the people in that community, right? When I talk to people around town about the NBDs generally, not that one specifically, everybody wants a coffee shop that they can walk to, right? Okay, and I have to admit, I don't know, the state of getting a cup of coffee other than the Dunkin' Donuts, which I frequent quite a bit. But I don't think that's what people have in mind when they say they want a coffee shop. They want a place they can go and sit and read and that kind of thing. Does that help? Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Again, very early, trying to come in not with answers, but with questions.
Anyone else? Well, let me say this. When this Jonathan said that the Economic Development Committee was formed in April, but we really didn't even get it filled, and Jonathan didn't become chair till the beginning of this year, if I remember correctly. And given the progress that the folks on the Economic Development Committee have come in the last 6-7 months, or a little bit more than that, really, it's been incredible. Because you're taking on two major tasks, which is how is the city perceived by others and marketed outwardly, and also how are we thinking about what the assets and the resources we have internally and having a community engagement. This is obviously first steps in many other meetings and discussions, both with the public as well as internally, to try to figure things out, and certainly with council as far as ultimately products that we may, as Jonathan explained, this is an advisory committee, doesn't have a jurisdiction of its own to make a determination. Rather, it comes back to us and says, okay, council, this is what we propose. Does this work for you guys? And then we look at that. But I want to really thank you. I want to thank all the members of the committee who are here, and Khurram, who couldn't be here tonight, for all the hard work that you guys have done in getting to where we have. I think this will make a huge addition. Some people may have thought, well, why do we need this? Now we know exactly why we need this, and I think it'll make a big difference in our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Yeah. See, there's support from the community. Okay, moving on, we have a second presentation tonight, and that is from the Recycling Advisory Committee and its chair, Karen Rayhofer. Karen, come on up.
Good evening. My presentation tonight will start with a summary of the Skip the Straw campaign, and then we'll move to a discussion of possible next steps. The city launched its Skip the Straw campaign last November, which rolled out over several months. Volunteers visited 75 establishments that offer straws, and in many cases had meaningful discussions with owners or management. 58 establishments ultimately displayed some campaign literature, and 3 expressed support for the campaign but declined to display any material. So at a very basic level, there was a strong showing of support. 14 said they would switch to offering straws only upon request. 2 switched to paper straws right after learning about the campaign. 3 were already in the process of switching to paper straws, and 3 stopped offering straws altogether. 12 said they would speak with their suppliers about paper options, and 2 said they would deplete their plastic inventory and then try to switch to an alternative. Several shared information about their efforts to use eco-friendly packaging, and overall, the campaign was well received. 3, though, were unaware of the problems with plastic straws, and 2 declined to participate because they view the issue as political, which I believe they mean controversial, not necessarily party lines. One owner expressed that what is really needed is an overhaul in packaging, but he added that if many lead in eliminating plastic straws, he would follow. And my favorite exchange was with one owner who initially was reluctant, eventually agreed to display some material. Months later, when I was eating dinner at the restaurant, he specifically came out to tell me that they were switching from plastic straws to an alternative. And that, to me, is a perfect example of how engagement, education, and planting a seed could yield positive results. Then there was the instance when a customer confronted me angrily, and said, "Forget the straws, get rid of the plastic bags." The tagline from the campaign was "Reduce single-use plastics." So perhaps we want to take another step in this direction and turn our attention to plastic bags. We're living in a plastic age. Although we became good at recycling, the market for recyclables has significantly changed, and recycling no longer provides the revenue that it used to. Plastics strain our landfills, litter our towns, and pollute our environment, and we cannot recycle our way out of our plastic problem. In recent years, the movement to reduce and ban single-use plastics has gone global. In fact, single-use was named 2018 Word of the Year, hyphenated Word of the Year, by one dictionary. With respect to plastic pollution in general, plastics are fossil fuel-based, and manufacturing them depletes our natural resources. Microplastics have been found in deep ocean trenches, mountain peaks, frozen sea ice, air, soil, rivers, and in our food. One study asserts that people eat at least 50,000 plastic particles a year and breathe in a similar quantity, the health effects of which have yet to be determined. And experts estimate that 100 million tons of plastic can be found in the ocean, and that by 2050, plastic in the ocean will outweigh fish. With respect to plastic bags in particular, the average plastic bag picked up at a grocery store or takeout has a lifespan of 10 to 20 minutes. And as for the time it takes to decompose, estimates range from 10 years to hundreds of years, or it may never fully decompose once in the ocean. Globally, as many as 160,000 plastic bags are used every second, and in the US, only 1 to 5% are returned for recycling. These statistics all range, so I'm trying to give you, just an overall idea here. Lastly, plastic bags have been estimated to kill 100,000 marine animals per year. With respect to global action being taken, according to a UN count, as of July 2018, 127 countries have adopted some form of legislation to regulate plastic bags. The European Union banned certain single-use items by 2021, and Canada aims to ban single-use plastics by 2021 as well. And recently, over 180 countries pledged to meet control measures to curb plastic pollution, but the United States was not one of them. So in the United States, we have an absence of leadership on this issue at the federal level. And at the state level here in New Jersey, proposed legislation banning single-use plastics has stalled. So this issue arguably is winding its way down to you at the municipal level. 6 U.S. states have passed legislation banning single-use plastic bags. More than 200 U.S. municipalities have enacted ordinances that either tax or ban plastic bags. And here in New Jersey, 18 municipalities and 1 county have some form of restriction on plastic bags, with another 12 having passed ordinances that are waiting to go into effect. So beyond the beach communities, we've got Hoboken, Jersey City, Maplewood, Glen Rock, and Ridgewood. And restrictions are being looked at or developed in at least 11 other towns, including Milburn and Livingston. New Jersey legislators have indicated that more city ordinances will help influence a state-level ban, and a unified state-level ban would likely be welcomed by retailers who have multiple locations throughout the state. After this meeting, I'm going to circulate some information from Clean Ocean Action, and it's a chart and specific information about the 18 municipalities in the 1 county in New Jersey, so you'll see where they fall in terms of more specifics. And also Clean Ocean Action provided me the details of the 2018 beach sweeps, so you'll see specifically what shows up on New Jersey shores. And that's just with fall and spring beach sweeps. Now let me highlight arguments against plastic bag bans. Alternatives to thin plastic grocery bags, such as thicker plastic bags, paper bags, and cloth bags, all have their own negative environmental impacts. Plastic bag bans could negatively impact working families, seniors on fixed income, and disabled people. And reusable bags harbor dangerous bacteria because many are not often cleaned. There are ways to counter some of these concerns, including exemptions for people on public assistance and disabled people. Now, since there aren't corporations in Summit that produce plastic, Common Council cannot regulate plastic production or packaging. But Common Council can, as Maplewood did, pass a resolution urging federal and state legislators to hold corporations responsible for plastics placed within the environment. Common Council can also consider a plastic bag ban. I want to say a few things about the range of these bans, or restrictions is really a better way to think of them as restrictions. They vary in scope and range from partial to full outright bans. Some ban plastic only, some ban plastic and paper. Some impose fees on paper only, some impose fees on plastic and paper. Some apply only to establishments with some minimum square footage, some have phase-in educational periods, and some have minimum gauge requirements, which ban thin plastic bags but allow for thicker plastic bags. Many have exceptions and exemptions, and there are arguments and studies in favor of and against each variation. According to Clean Ocean Action, the elements of an effective plastic bag ban are as follows. Ban all plastic film without permitting a thicker plastic bag. Include a mandatory fee on paper bags. Include a requirement that all paper carryout bags be 100% recyclable with at least 40% post-consumer recycled content, and require that the fee on paper carryout bags not apply to customers receiving government assistance. Clean Ocean Action believes a ban fee hybrid is the most effective, while another researcher believes that simply a fee on both plastic and paper bags best encourages reuse. Some reports assert that following complete plastic bag bans, there's a rise in the sale of small garbage bags because people need them for picking up animal waste and lining trash bins. And some studies show that following bag restrictions, there's a significant increase in the use of reusable bags and a significant decrease of plastic bags littering storm drain systems and the community in general. So let's look at some local indicators. First, where I started, businesses were receptive to the Skip the Straw campaign. Next, the city was collecting plastic film at the transfer station, partnering with the local supermarket as part of the Trex collection. After several months, the supermarket said they could no longer accept our plastic film because the volume was too great. We're working on alternatives, but recycling plastic bags is no easy task. The Bags to Benches program that's being run by Green Faith Circle to date has collected over 2,900 pounds of plastic film just over the course of 10 months. Also, which was presented here previously, the survey conducted by Green Summit showed that the number one priority was a plastic bag restriction. And lastly, this year, plastic bags were banned at the farmers market, and according to Summit Downtown, customers are thrilled and the ban has not negatively impacted sales. Now, arguably, just want to keep going back and forth here, arguably, because I'm a Libra. No. it's the same group of people who already use reusable bags, who took the survey, who go to the farmer's market. So how do we know whether or not the broader community has an appetite for a ban? Next steps could include the following, all of which our committee could assist with. Surveying a broader cross-section of residents. You would want consumer buy-in. Meeting with business owners and getting their input. Retail leadership and commitment would be important. Speaking with council members and mayors from other towns that either have implemented a restriction or are considering a restriction. And we can do further research to identify elements that comprise the most effective ordinance, collect more data on the impact such ordinances have on communities. There are many toolkits, model restrictions, and actual ordinances available. Wading through this information can seem overwhelming, and this presentation barely scratches the surface. There is no shortage of information out there on this topic. But sometimes there's one point or one image that informs the direction you take. And for me personally, it's the scale of global plastic pollution that is that one point. And as for imagery, in one article I read, plastic pollution was likened to an oil spill. We've had shores and waterways flooded with oil, wildlife saturated in oil, and we mobilize and address the problem. Right now, we have shores and waterways flooded with plastic, wildlife suffocated by plastic. Why aren't we mobilizing and addressing the problem? The goals of a plastic bag ban include reducing litter, changing people's behavior, and ultimately using less single-use plastic, which is where we should be heading. Plastics do serve good purposes and are components in many items we use and need. And single-use plastics are essential in the medical field, for example. But we should end our throwaway habits, and restricting a common throwaway item at the checkout counter can help accomplish that. So I will close with a personal anecdote. Many years back, when I first watched An Inconvenient Truth, I made changes immediately. I bought a Prius, stopped using paper towels, and I bought reusable bags for all family members. My grandmother said, "Why are you being so extreme?" So I asked her how she used to carry her groceries home from the market. So she paused, laughed, and said, "I brought my own bags." So the Recycling Advisory Committee urges you to take a hard look at restricting single-use plastic bags in the form that is best for Summit and for our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. I'm going to, well, let me just preface a couple of remarks, and then I'll say some more maybe later, depending on what I hear from other folks. But, that goes without saying almost. I want people who are hearing this and saying, well, why are we talking about this now? And who haven't been following, this is not the first time we've had people come to the dais to the podium and speak about the need to do something about plastic pollution. We had, as Karen referred to, people from Green Summit come in and talk about the survey results and the fact that the people who filled out the survey, and maybe it's a self-selected group, yes, but that's the people who are interested in it, and maybe that's just the tip of the iceberg. There may be just a lot more people out there who just don't fill out surveys. But they came in and they said, look, the vast majority of people they want addressed is plastics. We had 8th graders come in and present about the fact that not only their one group of 8th graders, but other 8th graders at Lawton C. Johnson Middle School had done displays about the need for controlling plastic pollution. And then we had a group of 5th graders come in on their own, decide to speak about the need to deal with plastic pollution. If our kids need to come in to tell us what we need to do, then we have an obligation to listen to them because they're the ones that are going to inherit this planet many more decades than we are. And so it is not the fact that we have now come to the Recycling Advisory Committee, but this is a long process that we've already undertaken. And I will tell people exactly clearly where I stand on this issue. I believe that we should move forward as a council and as a city with a ban on single-use plastic bags, on styrofoam and plastic straws. The only question for me is how much time we should give folks who already have businesses that have them in their inventory to deal with it, whether it's a year, 18 months, something like that. But the time has come. We are not unique here, as Karen referred to the fact not only communities in the United States, but all over the world are trying to deal with it. And yes, we could wait for the state to enact something, but if we were to wait for that, then possibly many of us would not be on council any longer and long gone. So with that, I will open it up for folks, other members of council to speak. Anybody else? Beth?
Thank you, Council President. I agree with a lot of your comments. I'm going to steal one of your lines and say this is a very green issue. And it's not just green because it involves the environment, but it's green because it involves our city finances as well. And being on council and on the Finance Committee, one of the issues we're facing is that the recycling contract that we have in town is really, has become very financially it's not feasible for the company that's doing it to go on. We're going to have to renegotiate that contract. It's going to cost us significantly more, maybe several times more. And that's because China was the largest market for these recyclables, and because of lots of different factors that could go into that market is pretty much drawn up. So this is not only just an issue, it's an issue that hits us in our pocketbooks as well as in our environment, and it's something that we need to look at very seriously. I'm in favor of some kind of restriction as well. I would be very interested in pursuing some of the options that you talked about, reaching out to business owners and speaking to them about how best to implement this and what consideration they would need in order to implement this fairly and not to put too much of a burden on them, and also to talk to some of the other municipalities who've enacted these restrictions and bans and seeing what their experience is and what we can learn from those communities. But I think we are really quickly approaching a point where we're going to have to take some action. And doing it in a thoughtful and measured way is the way to go about it, but I think that we need to move forward.
Thank you very much, Beth. Anyone else? Matt?
Thank you, Council President. Director Cascades, you, in our committee, you spoke about what happens when the plastic bags get caught up at the recycling center. Can you tell us about that, please?
So, through you, Council President. Sure. It is one of the biggest issues right now that the recyclers that recycle and transport to other countries is the plastic bags getting caught up in their machines. Their downtime on the average today in that process about 4 hours a day. So they have to shut down the process about 4 hours just to remove the bags out of the machines themselves, which creates an economic inconvenience, of course, for these folks. And they are looking for communities now to join together to ban plastic bags from the collection stream.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Paul.
Something to add on that, when we toured Giordano's recently, they recently completed a renovation, and they
Karen,
have a
could you
whole...
just explain what Giordano's is?
Giordano's is where we send our recyclables, and where Basso, I think, ultimately sends those curbside recyclables. So they completed a renovation, and one feature that they added are these overhead ducts, suctioning up the plastic bags, so that after the waste goes through optical sorters, then you have manual sorters, and they're literally picking out all the bags, and just, there's a whole collection, a new collection mechanism that they've had to implement because there's so many bags mixed in, and that they are like #1 tanglers. They stop the equipment. Now, a lot of these facilities, I believe, don't have the capability to recycle plastic bags, so it's a huge problem. It's like top of their list, that you've got bags that are jamming our equipment, and they're renovating specifically to try to draw the bags out of the stream.
Anyone else? Sure. Greg, I'm sorry, Nora. Greg?
Sure. So I talk all the time in here about how I've been an EMT for 9 years, and I promise it relates. Part of the reason why I continue to recertify and go through all these hours of training and all this is that when I am out to dinner or something with family or friends and something should happen, there's a medical emergency, I would like to believe that I could be helpful, that I would know how to help in that situation. And the way that it relates is this is not a municipal problem. This is not a state problem. It's not a countrywide problem. This is a sort of a global emergency, and we're not really seeing leadership. So we are the people. We've just heard there's a bunch of different ways that we can be helpful. And like you said, Karen, it's sort of fallen to us now. We look around and nobody else is doing anything, so we have to. So I'm in support of figuring out the best way to make it work for Summit, but I think we need to do it. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Nora, please.
I agree to a large extent with what you're saying. I just want us to be mindful of the cost to the businesses. We spent a lot of time, 20 minutes, about economic development in the town, and that's critical. But we also have to be mindful that we can't insert ourselves as a government and then put all the pressure on the business. So I'm in favor of moving forward, provided we get a real balance here so that the cost of banning plastic is not borne by businesses.
Okay,
That would be wrong, in my opinion.
So let's take an example where there's a fee. Let's take there's a fee on plastic and paper. There's just a fee. Right now, they don't charge fees for any of the bags. So in what I've read, it's actually welcome because typically the retailers get to retain that fee. So there, in that scenario, there's no...
They're making money.
They're making money. And even, they're already giving out plastic bags. Right. So if we ban the bags, and there's a fee now on paper bags, let's say we do that hybrid, they're making money because they don't now charge for the bags.
Well, and I just want to make sure that if we go in this direction, we are mindful that we have that in our plan.
Absolutely. And in some of the things that I've read, that in fact they welcome it, some welcome it because they're actually going to recoup some costs for the bags that they give out. Now we're started with Skip the Straw. We have developed some relationships. I mean, everybody's got them. The committee now has some people that we can sit down with that recognize us when we're going to dinner and come out and have meaningful discussions about this. And absolutely, we have to be mindful of that.
Right.
I mean, the flip side of this is, of course, that when, as you say, the stores right now are not charging, unless they're charging it through the overall pricing structure, they're not charging specifically for the plastic bag or the bag itself. If people bring in their own bags, right, it is not necessarily harming the store, because presumably if you are not specifically charging and getting a revenue stream for it, either you're keeping the same price level and therefore you're saving potentially a cost item that you otherwise are paying for, right? I mean, everybody that decided to skip the straw, I assume didn't say, okay, now I'm saving X amount of dollars on plastic straws that I was otherwise purchasing and giving to my customers for free. I'm going to now reduce the cost of my overall drink or food, right? They kept the same price, but yet they had a lower cost for their product, I mean, their cost for their services. So I'm not sure necessarily that it is a bad thing for stores per se. I mean, I agree with you, we should look at it carefully. I completely agree with the comments provided that, this has to be fit in with how we need to do an outreach, we need to figure that out. But there's also, in my opinion, we have to come to some decision and come to it soon. Because otherwise it's like, okay, we could look at this issue endlessly. We could look at a whole bunch of different communities and what they're doing endlessly. There's just too many options, but sooner or later we need to just come to a decision on our own.
But it has to be thoughtful, and it will have to take time, because we have to consider people's convenience, we have to consider all kinds of things, and not just getting this done because future generations are asking us to do it today.
No, I understand that, but at some point in time you say, okay, we've thought about it.
Fair enough, but you need,
Steve, you had it.
Can I, I'm sorry.
Oh,
may I
so
just
go
add,
ahead, Karen.
Just to follow up on your point, when you bring your own bag, most of the time they thank you, by the way. I mean, that's the experience I have, that they're happy that they're saving on a bag.
I have one comment, and it really, one of the studies I saw talked about the fact you have national chains are challenged because towns are varying, within the town. One of the appealing things about Summit, I think, is that we don't have a lot of national chains here. So, I mean, that is a step in that proper direction, as we have the CVS's, we have the Walgreens, but, we don't have a lot of the grocery stores and the like. So I think that's a positive in us moving forward. The other thing I haven't heard you talking about, and I'm amazed at, because I look at my closet, is the dry cleaning bags. And we're talking about food bags or grocery bags. What goes on with the dry cleaning bags that are everywhere?
Well, it's interesting because I recently asked a volunteer to look at that because I wanted to alert them to the Trex collections. And I think there's one place in town that allows you to either buy a reusable garment bag or bring your own. But those are bags that
Eco
can
Cleaners.
be
In Springfield.
Yeah.
They're
That-
really good.
that can be collected as part of some of these collection programs. And I think in some ordinances, some exempt them, some include, some cover them. But I know in town, we have one or two that are particularly good about it. And now they all know that there are plastic collections, so if there's any plastic at their facilities. But
Okay, Marjorie, please.
Thank you, Karen, for this presentation. And we've been talking about this issue for a long time, so it's really nice to see it come to this point. I think one of the things that you pointed out is that you have relationships with these businesses, and I think that's a great opportunity to continue, as you're following up with your Skip the Straw campaign, to continue following up with a conversation about plastic bags and reducing plastics in general. And, just getting their thoughts, their ideas, and I think that information will be very helpful going forward. So, so I would encourage you to move forward with gathering more information. And we have done some of that over the years, just at various times. But anyway, I think this is a great step forward. I'd like to see us move to make some changes on this front. The other thing that I'd like to ask you to do is just explain the Trex program quickly to people in the audience and people at home who might not know what it is.
okay, Trex is a company that makes plastic products. Plastic decking is one of them. And they have relationships with some of the supermarkets that the supermarkets collect the plastic film and plastic bags, and then, I don't know if they sell it, but they get it back to Trex, and Trex uses those plastic bags in making its products. So that's a perfect recycling loop. That's great, but it's hard to, you have to manage the collections, you have to have a supermarket that's willing to accept it, but it's a wonderful program.
Thank you.
Does that answer?
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah, Karen, I just want to say this was a great presentation, and I love what you guys have done around that, the straw campaign. And I guess my thought is that that's a very good way, I think, to go about changing behavior. It's much more effective to talk to people, to ask them, do you understand things? But my personal view is they should have a choice. None of this stuff is free. Recycling is very, very expensive, as Beth and Paul alluded to. There's a big cost to it. And as the global demand for recyclable material has basically flipped, because you used to get paid for it when China wanted everything. Now it's very expensive to get rid of it. And you read studies where a lot of quote-unquote recycled material just ends up in landfills. Well, these towns think they're doing this, and their residents are busy feeling good because they sort everything, and it ends up in a landfill anyways, because nobody wants this stuff. So, you know, I think we have to be very careful about separating out what's a feel-good thing, we're gonna feel great because we're making a difference, versus what's some of the realities around some of this stuff. And I think education is the important way to go about it. I personally really am against when there's a diktat that you've got to ban something, tell people you can't do this, you can't do that. I just think it's a slippery slope, and where does it stop? You know, the Economic Advisory Committee talked about it. Look at New York City. New York City is an amazing place that's vibrant and everything. Their retail storefront situation is a disaster, and it's because of the policies that are implemented by the governments there. You have to be careful about doing different things. There's empty I'm alluding to, there's empty storefronts all over Manhattan. So, like I said, I would much prefer the commission to go and educate people around it, educate store people, or whether they should give options. But there are costs involved. You know, we say, oh, you know, senior citizens, and you mentioned this, Karen, I thought it was good you mentioned it. You know, this mode of picking stuff up is cheap. They save money doing it this way. Maybe for the overall environment, there is a cost that's not being thought of around it, but when you change that and you ban something, those senior citizens are going to bear the cost of that. Businesses, David, you talked about, oh, how are they going to do it? Over time, competition is going to readjust for costs that are being imposed on these businesses. And like I said, I just think a much better way to do it is to educate people. Bring your own bag, that's great. I do my dry cleaning at a place that doesn't have recycled plastic. It works wonderfully. You know, they pick it up all the time, you give it back, and that kind of thing. They take the hangers back. You know, you don't have to give that away. But when we start talking about telling people how to live their lives, banning things, I think it's a problem. Now, ultimately, obviously, there is a way to vote on this stuff. The council wants to do it, and the citizens of Summit say, I hate you for doing it, they'll vote you out. That's something that council people and the mayor can decide on.
Exactly.
So ultimately, that's how people are going to make their expressions felt on it, because there will be elections on it if that becomes a hot topic. But, you know, like I said, my personal view is I'd much rather have people make choices, not be told what to do.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'm going to open it up to the public. Anybody from the public that wants to speak? Yeah, absolutely. Comments, questions, whatever the public wants. Donna, come on up.
Hi, Donna Gagan Patel, PATEL, 115 Beekman Road. I'm the chair of the Environmental Commission in Summit, and I just wanted to say that the Environmental Commission supports Karen's presentation and wishes to see this move forward as well in whatever capacity we can. Anecdotally, I just want to add some facts that I have. She mentioned Millburn and Livingston as two nearby towns that are in the process of doing this. The environmental commissioners in Madison, both Chatham Borough and Chatham Township and Cranford, I know have also talked to me about the fact they're in the process of either in drafting or showing it to council. In terms of how they went about getting public input, the Chathams created a SurveyMonkey survey that they sent out before the ordinance was drafted, one for residents, one for businesses specifically, that they actually told Summit we could use the format if we wanted to. And then Millburn, once they had the draft ordinance, held public hearings during the day and at night to hit different groups of the population, particularly hoping to get the business people in the daytime and then more residential people who were working in the evening one. And they had, you know, obviously people brought up good issues or comments and also a lot of positive feedback in terms of what they were looking to do. The plastic bag conversation earlier made me think we could just say 2 tips for people at home with recycling. Number 1, please remember not to put your plastic bags in your curbside recycling. Like you heard, they gum up the machines, they don't belong there. And number 2, don't put your recycling in a plastic bag. So you really need to have some sort of open container that the cans, aluminum cans, bottles go into, not a plastic bag, because that creates a problem at the end. And I had one more thing that I don't remember.
That's okay, Donna. Both were very helpful tips, though.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Okay.
Sorry.
But if you think about it, just come on up after that.
Thank you.
Anybody else that wants to speak? Talia, come on up.
Hi, I'm Talia Gould, G-O-U-L-D, and I live on 24 Webster Avenue. I'm here to address...
Just speak up, Talia.
Okay.
Just lower the
And
mic
then,
a little.
yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, I'm here to address the problem of climate change and plastic pollution. Okay, climate change poses one of the greatest threats to the long-term health of the world's population, including little towns like Summit. It is a problem that has been ignored for decades by leaders, politicians, and the average person, even though we consequently have caused it. Even though a small town might have a minimal impact on the world, we must take the opportunity to help save the planet. This can be encouraged by many different actions, such as reducing the use of single-use plastic. Decreasing the amount of plastic bags used in supermarkets and pharmacies would create a large imprint on this crisis. The average person only uses a plastic bag for around 12 minutes, and in that time, most likely has no idea where it's going after they've thrown it away or left it in the road. And due to this, about 100 to 500 billion plastic bags are dumped into the ocean annually. Once in the ocean, they harm the environment severely, suffocating marine life, destroying habitats, and starving animals if consumed. Considering these terrifying results, bringing a reusable bag to collect groceries is more than easy. I fully support the plan to reduce and ban the use of plastic bags in Summit, and I hope you consider it deeply. Thank you.
Thank you, Talia.
Thank you.
By the By the way, I think you have a very proud father up here, and rightfully so. By the way, I did not know that Talia was going to comment on that when I said about kids. But I do think, having heard her and having heard other kids, I will reiterate. And I know that sometimes adults, we complicate stuff and we think about all the different things. But sometimes we know what is the right thing to do. And we can look and we can try to figure this out. I think Donna had some great ideas about how to use the Survey Monkey, doing all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, we need a direction. We need to know where we're going. And businesses should know where we're going. And they should have a clear guidance about it. Because I think part of what government does is not simply to stay out of the marketplace. Government's responsibility is to take care of the health and welfare of its residents. That's what government is there for. And so if we know of a problem that was going to impact future generations, we don't simply sit by and say, oh, okay, that's going to be complicated, or that's going to cost some group of people some money, or this is going to be difficult. It is our responsibility as government officials to do something about it. And so I would say we should spend the next couple of months maybe looking at this issue, trying to figure out the best way, and then hopefully before the end of this year have a clear path forward that can be presented to council and then presented to the public of how we're going to get things done. So with that, I will thank Karen for coming in with a very thoughtful presentation. Thank you to you and to all the folks who assisted, and Donna and so forth. And we will move on from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to public comments. So now, any members of the public, and if there's people who want to leave now, this is a good opportunity to do so, but you're happy to stay. Oh, wait, Donna, do you now remember your comment? This is the third.
Sorry, this is the last thing I wanted to say. In this past January, as part of an effort with Green Summit, we did a reusable bag drive for Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service and Equality in Summit. And one of the purposes of it was to get reusable bags into the hands of the people who may not have them and would be who this ban or restriction would hit the hardest, including lower income people and the elderly. So the bags went to the different food pantries in town and went to Meals on Wheels, and I would welcome any other avenues to get the bags to the elderly, because I understand your point, and I think we want to not have it be a burden to those groups. We want to make it as easy as possible for them to transition to using reusable bags and make it as seamless as possible and help the education ahead of the actual restriction going into place if we put one in place.
Thank you,
That
Donna.
was
Very
it. Thank
important
you.
point. Thank you.
Thank
Yep,
you.
Absolutely. Okay. Now, asking folks to come up to state their name for public comments. Come on up, whoever wants to. That's not on the agenda, obviously. Yes. Robin, come on up.
Robin Dobashevsky, Dobizewski. I'm here about Ashwood Court and the Habitat for Humanity building. I'm sitting here and I'm listening tonight, all of you talking, the distinct quality of life of Summit. You, Mayor, talking about how we have a little community and it should be treated as such down there. And, you're saying so many things, and then our little neighborhood is just being destroyed. It's like everything that you're talking about, the health and the welfare, it's our people are being put in, danger. Our kids are being put in danger by these driveways that are all just going to be intersected. One of the neighbors, they're going to have to pull out onto the apron of the new driveway. It's just a horrible situation. There's no way to make it safe. And, it's just, I hear this. We moved into Summit, like my kids grew up here. I volunteered in Summit. I used to be happy to live in Summit. And right now I just feel so frustrated that for nothing that I did, my world and way of life is going to be destroyed. Our safety is being put at risk, and there is a viable option. There is the exit on Morris Avenue. There's a viable option that it doesn't have to be on Ashwood Court. You're talking about the business development in that area. The traffic on Ashwood Avenue already is horrible. You're dumping 150% more use on Ashwood Court. There's been no traffic studies done. I OPR'd that. I have that there was no traffic studies done. So how are you going to get businesses to even want to come in that area when you're not even going to be able to get to them because it's so much? It just sounds like everything, you're talking about things, but it's not all working together. And again, it's horrible. I've seen the comments on Facebook that people say, you can go through 3-4 cycles on Ashwood Avenue just to try to get out, and that's without adding more stuff to it. So, to say you're looking for business development, you're looking for, stuff like that, and then, you're just going to put more there without really addressing, I think, the full issue. And, in our court, it's one of those distinct neighborhoods of Summit. That's what makes Summit special, having all the different neighborhoods around. And ours is, it's just I feel like ours is the first, and then is all of Summit, just all the different areas that make Summit special, just going to be destroyed because there was an ordinance passed. Or, I hear about Linda Lane. The one house on Linda Lane can't be compared to 12 units that are being put on the lesser road. Because, that's increasing it. We have 4 little duplexes, and then you're putting 12 additional houses without any traffic studies, without any concern for any way of life or anyone who could get hurt. And it's just it's not just us, it's the Habitat people too. You're going to put people in here, there's no place for their kids to play. It's houses, it's a parking lot. So the kids are going to be down on the court playing, exposing them to the same traffic coming in and out. They're saying they'll put a traffic light for when they're exiting, but nothing's going to stop people from flying into the court and straight into the driveway. And it's just I feel like these issues are stuff we say over and over again and nobody's listening to. I know you say Habitat won't come to the table, Habitat, but the city's given Habitat the money, so why does Habitat have all the power? Why it feels like Habitat's the one that's dictating what's happening instead of like the people who are supposed to be representing us. It's like Habitat is, you know, all I hear is Habitat, Habitat, Habitat won't do it, but how can they not?
So Robin, and for those who are listening and who may not know all the background, obviously, this is dealing with the affordable housing that is going into the former Italian-American club site, or currently Italian-American club site, that's been purchased by Habitat for Humanity. And this was going through the zoning board. It's right now the possibility of an appeal by residents. And so what I'm going to do is, because as these guys all know, everybody knows, I hate people just giving comments and us sitting here and not being able to respond, and so frustrates me to no end. But on the issues dealing with your specific issue, I'm going to leave that for Matt Jacoby to address, because I think there was a couple of questions. One of them is, well, what about this contract with Habitat for Humanity, and how is that controlling? So I want you to be able to address that, Matt. But before I get that, I want to just make very clear about two things. We here, I think I can say this unreservedly with respect to everyone here, are totally concerned about every single resident in this town. Everybody. And the safety and security of every single person matters to us. It is without a doubt. We do not go and say, okay, we don't care about the safety of this group or this neighborhood or that neighborhood. That never enters into any of our minds, never enters into our minds who the people are that are asking for stuff. We just try to figure out if it can be done. And we certainly care about everybody's kids, because almost everyone here is a parent. So that is almost, I said almost everyone except for Greg there. Greg's, but besides that. I have parents. Yeah, but that's to be said is without a doubt. And I don't want anyone to think that we do not care, okay? It's just not the case. Now, does that mean that we can solve people's problems? No. That doesn't mean we can solve everybody's problems. We are not an adjudicatory body. There are processes that are in place. We appoint certain boards that are adjudicatory, such as the zoning board, and then we let them do their work. And people may not be happy with their results, but that doesn't mean that we as council get to second guess them or put them and say, okay, we're going to take away their power and we're going to come to a different decision, because there are laws and processes in place by which we all have to abide by. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt. Matt, maybe you can just address that specific question. I think there was one specific question about Habitat's contractual relationship with the city.
Well, Habitat for Humanity has a contractual relationship with the city. There's a contract in which the city, out of the trust fund, gave $1.2 million, Michael, to comply with the affordable housing settlement. That's a contract. We can't breach that contract. That had nothing to do with their application. I think people should understand, the governing body, and this is municipal law in New Jersey, the governing body and the Common Council here, they appoint members to the zoning board. Once they appoint the members to the zoning board, they can't involve themselves with zoning board applications. It's a quasi-judicial body. It's actually a crime for a council person to try to influence a zoning board member. They can't do it. If the zoning board, if people are upset with the zoning board or their determinations, you do have a right to challenge it. Everybody in New Jersey has that right. It's a 45-day right from the time that they publish the resolution. You can go to Superior Court and challenge it. And zoning boards get it right, zoning boards get it wrong. And that's why there's a whole body of case law out there that have gone through the courts where people have challenged zoning board determinations. So you mentioned about traffic studies. If a zoning board didn't consider a traffic study, if the applicant didn't have the proper, that's something that can be challenged. This body can't hear it. They have no power over it. The other thing that I know people are talking about is change the ordinance, change the ordinance. They can't. The state legislature several years ago changed the law. The law used to be that bodies, such as this body, could change an ordinance up to time of decision. And the legislature said, we're not doing that anymore. It's now time of application. So whatever laws exist on the books at the time a person files an application before the planning board or zoning board, Those are the laws, the ordinances that control. So in the case of Habitat for Humanity, they made an application based on a density variance that they're seeking, but the laws in the books at the time about ingress and egress, it goes onto the lesser road, and that ordinance has existed for many, many years. So this body, I know it's frustrating, people want this body to do it. This body, once they've appointed those members, that's a quasi-judicial body, that challenge has to go to New Jersey Superior Court. I wrote a letter to one of the residents stating that. And it's not, people, you have the right to challenge it, you have the right to look at it. And I think the body has heard you guys, but we can't get involved in the actual zoning application. And we also can't breach a contract that's tied into the affordable housing settlements, et cetera, where the 1.2 million is going to develop affordable housing.
And so it's basically like, like you say you care about our safety. It doesn't feel that way because honestly, like if this was in your neighborhood, what would you do? If it was your kids, if it was your neighborhood being destroyed, you're destroying a way of life. And it's like all we hear is nobody can do anything except hire lawyers and try to go and do it that way. Because we talked to this, we did it to the zoning board, and you know what their answer was? This is what the city wants. This is what we're told. You know, they're telling us this is what the city wants. It's written in there that, you know, it's uncomfortable, but this is what the city wants because habitat is more important than any of the other issues. And you can like look at the proposals and see it. It's like everyone's throwing everybody else under the bus. Nobody wants to do it, and we're basically the ones who are just screwed. I mean, for lack of better, because we're just the ones who like did nothing, and this was done by council who did this or that, and maybe you guys weren't on council at the time, but it was done, and we're the ones who are, you're destroying this, is what's the next neighborhood that's gonna happen to, or the next, and Summit's gonna just be a lost case in some places where all the uniqueness about Summit is destroyed just for affordable housing. And again, we've never been opposed to the affordable housing, we've just said, don't destroy our neighborhood. We deserve to have our neighborhood just like the affordable housing deserves to have their neighborhood. It's not fair that they take precedence over us.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Anyone else? Okay, Linda.
Linda Gagliano, 71 Michigan Avenue. Ashwood Court. Mayor Radis, he had spoken. And I asked for your help. And you said you couldn't do anything. It was in the hands of the Board of Adjustment, and they were autonomous. You can't tell them what to do. Well, in the resolution, the board says they know that there's negative impacts arising from the proposal, but they are consistent with the city's objectives for this location. Then it goes on to say, the use is not only permitted, but was intended to be in this location by the governing body. The governing body considered the negative impacts which drove the neighbors' concerns. The board is not permitted to disagree with the clear intent of the governing body. So I don't quite understand what that means. And it also says that the board cannot ignore the law. I realize that. But it sounds to me like at one point they had concerns about this, and they had asked Habitat to find another location for ingress and egress. Came back for a vote. 2 voted no, and luckily 5 voted yes. Seems like it was all orchestrated, and especially after I read this, that the governing body, they couldn't go against the governing body. Now, if they're supposed to be autonomous.
Linda, let me try to explain this, because I think maybe there's some confusion, okay?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, so let me try my best, and there's at least a couple of people here that can correct me if I get this wrong. I don't know exactly what they're referring to as what the governing body told them, but here's the background, right? So we had a lawsuit, as all the other municipalities in New Jersey did, filed by Fair Share Housing. And as a part of that lawsuit, we all had to either settle or go and litigate the case. And we were decided that we were going to settle that case. But in order to do so, what was required of us was to come up with a fair share housing plan. And in that plan, different sites were identified all throughout the city that would be able to sustain or have affordable housing in it. One of them was the Italian American Club. Another was Marco Polo. Third was Downtown Summit, so forth. There's a number of different sites. I think there were 7, 8, maybe 9 total. That was what the governing body voted on. I just wanted also to be clear, because I don't think people recognize this. That plan was publicly debated. People from throughout town knew that we were discussing an affordable housing plan.
For 2 years.
For 2 years. People came to council meetings. But that plan was not only debated in council. I was sitting not only as a member of council, but I was sitting as the council's liaison to the planning board. That plan was debated and discussed publicly, openly, with maps, with all the language that people are talking about now, about ingress, egress, everything, at the planning board.
How do you know about that,
Wait,
though?
no, hold on, let me finish, right? People did come. People came to those planning board sessions. People asked questions about their particular neighborhood. People in and around Marco Polo came and spoke about their concerns, about whether or not it would, what the impacts would be. We went through and we had discussions about that. Then, after it came from the planning board, it came back to council. Again, publicly noticed, publicly available. You ask, how did people know about it? It was put on the city's website. It was put on, I'll tell you, for my personal city council page, I put it on and I gave notice. Now, that doesn't mean, there's only so many ways of communicating information. We cannot go to everybody's house, knock and say, there's going to be this thing or that thing happening. Would you be interested? It is incumbent upon citizens to also follow what is going on in their
But
government.
everything is on the website. You do everything on the website.
There is no public, there is no longer a one single newspaper that goes through town. There are online options, and there's the city's website. Michael, do you want to answer
I just want
that?
to comment to your point, Council President. When it came to the overlay zones,
Yeah.
every property owner within a 200-foot radius of those
Oh, thank you very
those
much.
particular areas were noticed
We did get a
separately.
notice.
Okay, so I just want to identify that.
And like I said, we had no objections, any of us in the court, with the overlay zone.
But so in that map, actually, thank you very much, thank you, because I completely forgot about that. But in so if you had decided, once you got that notice to come to either one council meeting, a planning board meeting, or another council meeting, those documents were publicly available for you to see that the egress and ingress was specifically said as Ashwood Court. There was public, it is there in the document. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I looked at it. I actually looked at it. I will tell you this, Tara. I looked at it after this issue came up and you guys were talking about it. And I said to Michael, I don't remember seeing that. And he said to me, David, look at the document. I flipped through it and I was myself surprised. I was like, oh, wow. It says right there, it is on Ashwood Court. If I'll show, the next time, if you guys want to come or look at the Fair Share Housing Plan, look it online, look at what it says there. It specifically shows a map. It shows the diagram of the property, and it specifically refers to the ingress, egress as being Ashwood Court. So the idea that this was somehow done, without people getting notice for it, is absolutely incorrect. The fact that people don't avail themselves of the ability to redress and ask questions when they could have had an impact does not mean that we can somehow go back in time and readdress those things.
Why was an ordinance passed regarding access to Ashwood Court? I mean, now you're having 72 trips per day added on to the court. Didn't the council see that the court is small? It's 180 feet long.
The ingress egress dealing with Ashwood Court has to do with the fact that for decades upon decades, apparently, this town has had an ordinance.
There's an ordinance that's existed since the 80s, at least. That ordinance I can tell you what ordinance it is. Bear with me 1 second. It's ordinance 35-4.2-8, parentheses, capital A, close parentheses. And what that ordinance in layman's terms says is that when you have a property and there's 2 points of ingress egress, you have to go to the lesser traveled road. That ordinance existed. So when what David's talking about, when the overlay zones were adopted, they were just readopting the ordinance that has existed for 30-plus years. They didn't say, oh, let's change the ordinance for Ashwood Court. That ordinance already existed. So if let's pretend you didn't have any overlay zones, if a developer, Matt Giacobbe, said, I want to build a unit on Ashwood Court, and I bought the Italian-American Club, regardless of the overlay zones, the ingress-egress would be onto Ashwood Court based on this ordinance that has existed for decades. And that's why when Habitat for Humanity made their application, the ordinance that controls is that ordinance that's been on the books for decades. We, the governing body, cannot change that ordinance. Once they made that application, that's the ordinance that exists. And that ordinance has existed and been applied consistently throughout the town for literally decades.
So safety, nothing comes into play when it comes to your ordinance about safety, harmonious community. I mean, we're going to be
Well, I
sitting
think
looking
that
out
that's, I
our
don't think that's
window at
accurate.
an
I
elevated
think the
driveway
ordinance,
in the front of our house.
I think,
People,
ma'am,
you don't think about that, how it affects your, your quality of life? That is very sad. I'm very sad. I'm very disappointed in Summit. I'd move out in a heartbeat if it wasn't for my kids. And I have other people that I've spoken to feel the same way. It's congested down there. They're building a huge building on Broad Street that is so out of character. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you're doing to East Summit.
That building, just so you guys, so people know, and I know this has been also raised in social media, so I'm going to just address this. That was a building that was brought, plans were brought in front of the planning board when I was just a member of the planning board, not even on council, I think. So that was many, many years ago. I recall that there was a group of us that voted against it. I was one of the people that voted against it. I didn't think it looked right. That being said, it passed the planning board. I don't think it even came up in front of any council. I think it was just done through the planning board, because that's what happens. I think people think that city council here decides about all of these different issues. It doesn't. There are different ways that development gets done. Some development goes through the planning board. Some development goes through the zoning board, and very, very few actually come in front of city council. We are not typically the body that hears those things. There are two different bodies that are designed because they have expertise, they hear many cases, and they are the functioning bodies for those purposes. And it's the rare occasion that something comes in front of us.
I just wanted to make one more point. Whoever purchases the Italian-American Club property, as of right, they could build 9 units. They wouldn't have to go. So 9 units versus 12. So you're effectively talking, the variance gave them the ability to have 3 more units. So we already know that there would be cars from 9 units there. So it's not as though.
We didn't know that.
Well,
Until the
that's
application.
the size of the property, and our zoning laws in the community allows for that to
Because
occur.
it's affordable housing.
No,
We don't-
no, I'm trying to make this clear to you. It has nothing to do with affordable housing. If I, Nora Radis, decide that I want to go and, if I had the money anywhere, to buy that property and for an investment, build 9 units, 9, to have them at market rate, for either rental or purchase, at market rate, not affordable housing. I could do that without going to the zoning board. I have the right to do that. So anybody purchasing that, nothing to do with affordable housing, can go in there and put in 9 units, and you'd have vehicles for 9 units, and they would all be going to Ashwood Court. So the increase, because it's affordable housing through this variance that they received from the zoning board, the increase is an incremental 3 units, and the cars from 3 units.
But there was an opportunity with the Board of Adjustment for them to use Morris Avenue, if the property on, that the Italian American Club now owns, if it could be bought. City said they didn't have the money, and they got their approval already, so they didn't want anything from the park line, and they didn't want to meet with Christian organization. So now, this is not going to be a very harmonious situation going on. I can grant you that.
Well, that's unfortunate.
It's terrible.
That is
And
unfortunate.
a stop sign at the end of a driveway in a residential area, right, a street within a street. The character of the neighborhood just got all screwed up. And with the poor little kids, how are the kids gonna play? We're gonna have construction vehicles coming through. We're gonna have 70 cars a day going through, plus our cars from the court. Nobody ever thought this out when they passed that ordinance. And that's shameful. That's very shameful.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Anyone else, please come on up.
Good evening. It's good to see many of you again. The last time I was here, I talked about Bryant Park when I was president of the Conservancy. Some of you might have been here at this meeting, and I was trying to bring you up to date as to what we were doing in terms of building the gazebo and doing the other improvements in Bryant Park, which I think has really come out well. But right now, I've got more of a concern here, and that really is I live on Ashwood Court. I'm also a civil engineer that's licensed in the state of New Jersey, and also a traffic engineer that I've been for 53 years. So I have a bit of knowledge of what's happening here that's a professional knowledge. And I know some of you might have grown up there on Ashwood Court and know what the area is like, and have lived there and done that. I also look at a community is made up of neighborhoods, and a strong community is made up of strong neighborhoods. Anything that weakens a community is a bad neighborhood or a weak neighborhood. And right now, you have a weak neighborhood happening on Ashwood Court. There are ways of handling that. And if you look at the ordinance that was passed, and let me just read the introduction to the ordinance, which I think takes precedent over the traffic going to the smaller street. But this is Summit's General Design Standards 35-5.1 that state, the purpose of this article is to promote the general welfare in Summit, to encourage the most appropriate use of land for the construction and alteration of a building, structure, or addition thereto, and to discourage any use of land where such construction or use will adversely affect the use and enjoyment of adjacent or nearby property or the health and welfare of the citizens of the city. Now, this access from the proposed Habitat for Humanity site is going to go and affect the enjoyment and the use of the neighboring properties. It's also going to affect the health and welfare of the property owners on Ashwood Court. So this is in direct conflict to having that access only on Ashwood Court and not have the property redirected. I think what I'm asking for is help. You're the governing body. There's a problem. How can we solve problems? You're problem solvers, aren't you? I think you are. Okay, the problem is, how do we get the access going to Morris Avenue, which is perfectly capable of doing it, because right now you've got over 70 cars parked there on a daily basis that have to have access in and out. Habitat is talking about 27 parking places. Also, the other thing on that resolution that was passed, it also passed for a subdivision. And that subdivision divided the property that the Italian American Club had into two parts. That didn't have to be done. The subdivision didn't have to be done. But it seems like we get one story from the zoning board that the city council is really requiring us to do this by law. And then I get it from here that really it's something that the zoning board did and that you can't interfere with the zoning board. So I'm getting, smacked back and forth, and I'm trying to figure out how do we solve a problem. And all I can do is please help us solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alejandra, come
I just want to make one last comment. During the last meeting that I believe was when this ordinance was discussed, the city planner said that there needed to be a traffic study in order to decide where the exit was going to be. I watched the videos, and that's what I heard last word before the ordinance was passed. That's why we have been asking for that traffic study. What we saw is like there's the last meeting where the city planner said there has to be a traffic study, then the ordinance was passed. So we don't see where there was an opportunity for anybody to give their opinion or comment on it. So that's, I spent some time going over those meetings, and that's what I gathered. That's what we have been asking. The city planner said there should be a traffic study that will decide where the exit will be. Next thing we know, the ordinance was passed, and it was decided it was going to be on Ashwood Court. What happened in the middle? How was that decision made? We understand that there was a previous ordinance, but there's also the issue of having a negative impact on the neighborhood that should have been considered, and that's what the city planner that the city hired said. There was going to be a traffic study. So I just wanted to add that comment.
When you say the previous ordinance, you're referring to the ordinance regarding the approval of the Fair Share Housing Plan? What previous ordinance are you referring
Well,
to?
no, just the ordinance where the overlay zones were passed, and the wording was added after the meeting saying that the exit should be onto the court. But during that meeting, that was 2017, the city planner said that there should be a traffic study, and that's a traffic study we have been asking. I don't think it happened, because otherwise we would have been provided with that traffic study. So why, if,
My understanding was that Habitat did a traffic assessment.
Yes, I think that, and I haven't reviewed that tape, but the city doesn't hire traffic engineers for traffic studies. I think what the person was probably referring to was that if there's an application, the applicant, in this case it would be Habitat for Humanity, would be required to produce a traffic study, which would then be considered by the zoning board or the planning board.
respectfully, I don't think that's what the city planner said. That he was speaking here in front of the Common Council, and he said that before the decision was made on where the exit was going to be, there should be a traffic study. When Habitat came later on to the zoning board, the decision was already made. How was that decision made? That's the question that we have, and that's the question that we are asking. What was considered? How was the safety of the residents considered? Because Habitat, they said their traffic planner, said, their traffic study said that they do not consider the safety of the people in the court. They said it plainly. You can read the records. They only considered how many more minutes or seconds they were added onto the traffic of Ashwood Avenue. Our concern are the children of Ashwood Court. And that was not considered by the traffic study done by Habitat, and we don't believe that there was any other traffic study as it was requested by the city planner that the city hired. So that's the question that we have had. Why was that decided that way?
Matt, do you want
Yeah, I think what the mayor said earlier, and I'll use myself as an example. No overlay zone, I bought that Italian-American club. As a matter of right, based on the ordinances that exist in the city for decades, I could build 9 units, and those 9 units would exit onto Ashwood Court. That's what the law says. That didn't change the overlay zone, that's what occurred. What Habitat Humanity did is they went into the zoning board for a density use variance to increase it from 9 units to 12. So putting Habitat Humanity for aside and the overlay zones aside, the ordinance that has existed for literally decades says that the ingress and egress would go to Ashwood Court. That's a matter of right. If I bought it and wanted to put 9 units on that tract, I wouldn't have to go anywhere. I wouldn't have to go to the planning board, zoning board. I could just do it as a matter of right, get building ordinances and do it, because that was in conformance with laws that have existed in the city. And Paul Cascase could correct me, but my understanding of looking back, that ordinance, the ingress-egress ordinance, goes back into at least the early 80s, might even be the 70s. And those ordinances were designed because they want people going onto lesser traveled roads, not onto major traveled roads, because that's when accidents happen. So those ordinances were designed decades ago for public safety. So I think that the issue of a traffic study, I can't speak to that specifically, but I do know that the traffic study, part of the application that Habitat had to do was they had to present a traffic study. If you, as a resident, disagree with Habitat's application, that's your right. You have the absolute right to disagree with it, and you have a right to challenge the zoning board's determination. This governing body can't do that, unfortunately.
We understand that the problem that we are faced, as was said before, that the zoning board said we are following what the Common Council decided. So we are following their guidance. So we are just asking, how did that come to be?
I think what they probably were suggesting is that the Common Council, it's not just this Common Council here, it's decades of Common Councils have passed ordinances. They passed the master plan, they passed these ordinances that exist. So when they say we're following the Common Council, it's not like Common Council people were calling up zoning board members saying do this, do that. They're just following the laws of the city of Summit when they were considering this application. And what was before them, again, was a density variance. It wasn't about an ingress-egress. They were looking at laws that have existed for decades.
Right. Right. But we just feel that, you know, this was an ordinance that might be appropriate for many sites, but the same way that they asked for a variance because they felt that 12 units were a better fit for that area. We are saying that an egress onto the court is not the best way to proceed with this project. And we tried to bring this into the zoning board, and nobody was interested in hearing. When we presented our planner, nobody had any questions for us. So it's not our feeling that, you know, there was a thorough study of this particular case. The fact that there's a law that says that they could do it doesn't mean that it's a good idea. And I think something could have been done to get the exit through Morris. It wasn't an impossible project. It was not like a portal into another dimension. It was just sending the traffic into a different
Again,
street.
that was the decision of the zoning board. It's a quasi-judicial body. They make a decision. Once they make a decision, and you have the right, absolute right to disagree with it.
Yeah, but you know, this is just basically throwing the burden into a small group of residents.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please, come on up.
My name is Karen Venturella. I live at 14 Lewis Avenue in Summit. Is it okay if I go back to the plastic?
Absolutely.
Okay. So it wasn't clear to me what the end result was. That are we delaying? Like, can we? I don't know if the council can even make a recommendation that maybe businesses in Summit consider not using single-use plastic. It seemed to me like we were just kicking the can down the road. Like we're saying.
Well,
we're not,
I
don't know.
what I was hearing among council members is that people wanted us to figure out a mechanism to get to the point of being able to, I made my position clear, what I would like, right? So I don't know where everybody else's head is. I've heard different opinions. What I would think that we would do is probably have, and maybe this makes sense, I think for some clarity's perspective, the Recycling Advisory Board, along with the Environmental Commission, working together to come up with both a survey. It seems like that's something that people generally seem supportive of, the idea that we need to get survey and information both from residents and from businesses. And then also, I would suggest a draft resolution or ordinance of how we would go about doing it. Suppose the results are, as we think probably, maybe, well, let's find out what it is, but let's assume that people are in support of the idea of banning single-use plastic bags and styrofoam and plastic straws. Okay, let's just assume that's the case. Then, let's come up with an ordinance that addresses it. And that I think, hopefully, what I would like to see at least is both those things occur within this calendar year. We've got at least 5 more months. Let's try to use them in this year to see if we can move forward. That would be my proposal. Nora?
Just to help answer your question along with what Council President was saying, sort of process. So there's the research piece, which is research, which is survey and so forth. Then it would go into, some sort of proposal would go to a committee.
But I just wondered if there could be like publicity for businesses to know now that they're, like you're thinking about it, or you
Sure,
might make a
sure.
recommendation,
So-
so
It's
that
gonna be
they don't buy the more plastic straws? and
Anybody who reads the TAP is going to read about this in the next couple of days.
And what I would suggest also is that there is an organization called Summit Downtown Inc., which was referred to, and I would ask our liaisons to the Summit Downtown Inc. to share with them this discussion that we had today, and because sometimes, like for instance, Summit Downtown Inc. is having a special kind of like an all-hands meeting or whatever. You can come to a meeting, actually
Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I will be giving a presentation report of what's going on in the city, and I will certainly mention that we had a lengthy discussion about this tonight.
Yeah, so thank you, Nora. And that would be great, because then those are the people that are most affected. We do have, as the Economic Development Committee mentioned, there is neighborhood businesses also in addition to the downtown. So Summit Downtown Inc. Only covers the downtown, but there are of course other businesses. But that's a pretty large group of the folks that will be impacted, and that's a good way of getting them. And as you point out correctly, part of it is I think we all agree, we don't want to harm our businesses. That's not our intent. And so giving them fair warning that something may be coming down the road helps them plan as businesses for the future. And I think businesses like certainty, so there's something to be said for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Tara, second, you didn't go yet, did you?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I've been very quiet.
Yeah, sorry.
Hi, Tara Gagliano, 6 Ashwood Court. My property would directly face the driveway. That would be Habitat for Humanity. I just want to go back for a second to recycling.
Sure, absolutely, yeah, good.
So, in speaking about recycling, we've been using plastic bags for years, right? And now we're here making a motion to change that. And you guys are going to then make an ordinance, correct?
That's the idea. At least some of us have that idea, yes, I would agree. Some of us
Whatever that may
not.
be, okay? Well, let's apply it to this situation. Here we have a 1980s ordinance that may have applied at that time, but now clearly there's an issue, and now we're kind of, from what I can see, we're picking and choosing what ordinance we want to apply to this. What's really disheartening for me is the fact that I am going to be backing out directly onto the apron of this driveway. I am directly impacted. So those 70 to 80 trips are going to directly impact or provide some, 70 or 80 opportunities for my kid to get hit, my 1-year-old. I've spent the majority of her existence fighting the ingress and egress of this, not the project, and have been called a racist in the meantime, but fighting the ingress and egress because of safety, okay? My other concern is, now that we're talking about what it is I'm going to be looking at, I do not understand how 2 6-unit buildings fit the footprint of Ashwood Court, which are 4 2-family houses. On top of that, what I really don't understand is, it was my understanding of Habitat for Humanity was to come in, provide an opportunity for people of lower income to move up and be provided with another way of life or a better way of life. Is that correct? But we're not labeling them and saying you're low income, all right? We're just giving them an opportunity. I don't understand now why we have to label them and put a sign out front that says Morris Habitat for Humanity. That is ridiculous. That's like saying, hi, I'm low income and I live here. I've never seen anything like it. Everything about this project has boggled my mind. My husband is a member of the Italian American Club. I know how this deal went down, okay? I don't understand how the members of council cannot come out and take a look, and many of you have, and take a look at the situation at hand that we're talking about. Can you amend the ordinance?
So this was answered by Matt, so I'll try to answer it again. With regard to, you made the analogy between the plastic bags and the ordinance dealing with the...
They're both not good situations.
The road. As our legal counsel explained, at the time that they made the application, That was the law. If today, if tomorrow, whatever, the next time this council met, we decided, you know what, we've decided this idea of secondary street exits don't make any more sense. It would make no difference to the application, and Matt can correct me if I get this wrong, it would make no difference to this Ashwood Court Habitat for Humanity issue, because they are operating on the existing law.
But if
Okay?
there's a
So
solution,
let me finish. So all this talk about, okay, let's change the law, change the ordinance, that may have an impact on future development in other roads, but it will make no difference on your road. So let's just get that out of the way.
So we're left with spending 35 to 50 grand that we're going to have to spend to bring this to Superior Court to appeal. That is unfair. Now, going back to what you had said about how through the tapes, you saw that it was Ashwood Court.
I didn't say the tapes. I said
Or
the documents.
whatever it may be, the documents, whatever. There was one meeting, and it was an initial meeting, where it was originally stated that the access would be on Henry Street. So now if people were there and left and thought, we're done, that's an issue. It was corrected at the end of the meeting.
At the zoning board meeting, I assume?
No,
No, at a planning board meeting?
I believe it was one of your meetings.
At council meetings, we talked about Henry Street? That I do not recall, so I can't.
I don't know if
really
Henry
speak
Street
to
came
it.
up because of the park line, which I'm being affected by too. So I'm getting a double whammy.
Okay,
But going back to, like Walter, he stated another ordinance. Why doesn't that ordinance supersede the other ordinance?
So the New Jersey legislature passed a law, and I can tell you, it's 40, look it up, 40:55 capital D dash 10.5. And what the state legislature, which this council, the zoning, they all have to comply with the state law, says whatever law, whatever ordinances you have on the books, when somebody files an application before a zoning board or planning board, that law is the law to be decided.
Isn't that other law on the books too, Walter?
So the law that they have with ingress and egress was in existence since the 80s. They made that application, so.
What
the
about
zoning-
this? What about this ordinance?
Ma'am, I'm trying to address your situation. You can't change the law. That's an introduction. If you look it up, it's New Jersey Statutes Annotated, NJSA 40:55 capital D dash 10.5. That's the statute. And you can look it up, you Google it, just do New Jersey time of application. There's articles on it. It was a huge shift in legislature. It used to always be time of decision. For decades, it was time of decision. So somebody could put in an application, and before the zoning board or planning board decided the application, a governing body could change the ordinance. And the state legislature, back, I'd say, 7 or 8 years ago, said, no more. It's now time of application. When you submit your application, you get whatever's in place at that time, that's what controls. So if you submit your application, and it's a complete application, you submit it, and 3 days later, the governing body changes the ordinance, the new ordinance doesn't apply. It was the ordinance that was in place when you filed. So when they filed the ordinance in place, and this ordinance has existed for decades. This isn't something that the Common Council just adopted. They adopted it literally, nobody here, a lot of these people probably didn't even live in Summit when it was adopted. It was adopted, as far as I can tell, maybe in the late 70s.
Okay, so that's not really answering my question. I'm asking about this current ordinance that Walter brought
Well, I
up.
don't have that ordinance, so I'd
Here.
have to look at it. That's fine. But I'm giving you the general thing. So at this juncture, there is an approved application, an approved variance from the zoning board. There's nothing this governing body can do. I know that people don't want to hear that, but the governing body can't override a zoning board. Only the Superior Court can.
So we're left to spend 35 to 50 grand. And the safety of my child. And what really is disheartening is the fact that the safety of my child, as well as the 9 other kids on the court, were not taken into consideration. And it's as if we do not matter, but Habitat for Humanity future residents do matter.
no,
And it's expected that we're to get along. I mean, it wasn't a complete application. I'm sorry. Listen, this is the safety of my kid, and I believe every single one of you would be up here doing the same.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Look, we.
And I'm
none
tired
us
of
have
hearing about the
criticized-
same
none of us
ordinance.
have-
The
hold on.
ordinance, the
Tara,
ordinance,
Tara,
the
Tara,
ordinance
We
shouldn't.
have to act within the law.
But the
Tara.
ordinance should not supersede safety. That's just be common sense.
Tara, if I could just finish, right? I'm not saying, or none of us are saying that you guys cannot seek redress, cannot express your frustration, your anger, whatever you want at us and say, you know, we want you to do this. That's actually what people should do. That's your right as citizens, that's your right as taxpayers to come to us and say, I want you to change this, I want you to do that because it matters to me. None of us are objecting to that. What I don't want people to think, though, is somehow we did any of this willy-nilly, that we did this without caring. And I will tell you, I'm positive here that if there are mitigation measures, we would certainly consider whatever mitigation measures that could be possible within the city's control that could help to alleviate, to make it less unsafe as you perceive it. But we are not, first of all, as the mayor says, as our legal counsel says, as you would want us to be. I just want this to be very clear. You would not want us on the other side putting our thumb and saying we want to do this and that for these people because either we like them or we know them or because we think they're complaining enough to us that we're tired of hearing from them, so we'll do something about it. There is reasons why bodies have to follow law. And the reason is because overall it protects all of us when laws are enforced. Okay? And I'm sorry, I know you guys are frustrated with us, you're angry with us, you think that we do not care, but I will tell you, at the end of the day, decisions were made in order for this city to comply with its legal obligations.
So the city
No-
matters more
No,
than its residents.
you are a member of this city. You are a member of this city. You should care that we comply with laws.
Not at my kid's safety of her
No,
getting hit.
no, I disagree.
That
I'm
doesn't
sorry.
make any
I'm sorry.
sense.
This is, I'm maybe looking at it incorrectly in your opinion, but I will tell you this. I think most residents, I would hope all residents would appreciate an impartial and fair application of the law by a governing body. It isn't.
Well,
to-
then going back to the resolution, that's not what they're saying. They're
If-
saying
if-
that they
if
were
that- if-
basically
if you
forced to
believe-
do
if
it.
If you believe there's a contradiction in ordinances and resolutions, then this is not the body to resolve that. That
I'm here
body is-
appealing to
on
you
your
for help,
application is the
the same way
judicatory body.
Walter did. And you
Again,
guys are our governing body, and you guys are the ones that make ordinances.
We have
and
no power to overrule the zoning board.
It's a quasi-judicial body. The only body that can overrule a zoning board determination is the New Jersey Superior Court.
So again, when you guys move forward in making ordinances, I guess you should take into consideration everybody, because this clearly was not taken into consideration, everybody.
We don't know what happened 40 years ago.
Again, what happened 40 years ago may not have been what's best for what's going on now. Same with recycling. So maybe your
Appreciate it.
ordinances need to be revisited a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Sure. Just identify yourself, please.
Todd Domashevsky.
Yes.
I guess maybe for the city solicitor, we met with Minority Leader Bramnick today of the Assembly, and he had implied that changing the ordinance and following it now was possible. So I'm just kind of confused by the discrepancies
all.
between what he said versus what
Look
the law is.
up the law. The law that I cited to you, the.
Right, the one you just quoted. I understand.
You
I'm
can
just
read it.
confused by the
Yeah, and if
discrepancies
you
in the
Google it,
answers.
Just Google New Jersey time of application rule.
Right.
There's a whole body of legal articles that came out when they changed it. That was done by the New Jersey State Legislature.
But
signed by the
I'm
governor,
just
yeah.
confused why he's saying
I think
one
Governor
thing and then
Christie
he's
was the
saying
governor in
this.
place when it was signed into law earlier in his term.
Right, right.
But the New Jersey legislature changed that, and it had a profound impact on zoning across the state.
Right.
But that was changed. So this body absolutely cannot change a law and then retroactively apply it to a zoning application, and they definitely can't apply something to a zoning application that's already been approved.
which is fair. I'm just confused why he might have made that
I don't know if
comment.
Well, in fairness to
I know
Assemblyman
we
Brandt.
can't answer it. It's
No,
just-
of course not,
it's
but
a
perhaps
very
he was.
interesting dynamic that-
Perhaps he was he was saying that if the governing body going forward wanted to change the ordinance for future.
I don't know, he seemed to say that that would be the best solution moving forward, would be to change the ordinance for
Well, I think
this
he's
particular
mistaken.
situation. So he might be, and that's
Yeah.
just kind of what I'm,
You may not know all the
saying.
details of it, but that, I'm just telling you.
And then, yeah, I
if
think
you
even
read
the zoning board member who was there too kind of said the same thing. So maybe he was misinformed of the situation as well.
I mean, there's a recent New Jersey Supreme Court case dealing with the time of application rule, when somebody challenged a application that they said was not complete. And that went all the way to the New Jersey Supreme Court. So, again, it's gotta be a complete application when you file, but when you file that complete application, whatever laws are on the books, when I say laws, zoning ordinances that could deal with that zone in that town, that's what controls.
No, Linda, you have to.
I'm not
come
gonna
to-
give legal advice, I'm giving you general overview.
Right.
About the clarification about if an application is not complete when it's submitted, then that's
There was a
not-
Supreme Court case recently that addressed that issue.
And were they?
I'm not gonna opine, there's a Supreme Court case, you can read it.
Okay, so now
It's called
this
Dunbar.
application was not complete.
I'm not, ma'am,
Can
I'm
no,
not
can we not
opining.
do it this way, please?
Yeah.
Please, let's not do it this way. Can I just ask you a question? Did you say there was a zoning board member with you at Assemblyman Bramnick's office?
No, we're not in his office. We were meeting just in
But
public.
was there a zoning board member there with you?
The chairman of the Republican Party, yeah.
Steve Spur?
Yes,
He was present with you?
correct.
Thank you. Okay. I understand. I appreciate that.
He wasn't with us when we were talking.
And that's fair too. He was not with, when we were talking with.
It was at the office before, so he was not with us talking.
Just come on up for a second, Robin. I just want clarification on this.
It was a Republican gathering at the office,
Okay.
so.
He happened to be present.
Correct, he happened to be present.
But
We
it was not
happened to-
intentional, it was not that he was organizing a meeting.
No, it was like Republicans.
Understood.
Yeah, he wanted to
Okay,
clarify.
thank you.
We
No,
happened
that's
to
a-
talk
it's a-
to,
I get it.
right, and he happened to be there with a lot of other Republicans.
I
That was
understand.
it, it was not anybody trying to.
I understand.
Yeah, I just
Because
wanted-
you could all appreciate.
I was a little worried when you were thinking that, because I was like, that's not what happened.
Okay,
I don't
no,
want anyone to
that's
think
why,
that
that's why I
that
asked for the
happened.
clarification. Thank you,
Yeah,
I appreciate
okay.
it. Thank you very much. Okay, any other public comments on something that's not on the agenda? Come on up, Joe.
So David, I appreciate your point about not sort of passing laws willy-nilly. I'm still struggling to understand how that ordinance was passed. If I look at the minutes, it seems like there was a discussion about having a traffic study, and at the same night, that ordinance was passed. So clearly there was no traffic study done during that particular meeting. So my question is, how do you go from not having a traffic study to, okay, let's go pass this law, and let's set the access point at Ashwood Court without any traffic study?
I think maybe you missed it because this was brought up by your wife, the same point.
Mhm.
And I think, and I have not looked back at the tape, and I have not looked back at whatever information, so I'm going, and I think the assumption, or this assumption probably is, and don't hold me to this, is that the explanation was there would be a traffic study or some traffic analysis at the time of the development of a project, and which would be consistent with how projects are done. Let's assume that it was a different project, like for instance, Marco Polo, I'm sure there's residents there would have said, well, how would we know what is the impact of this project? The only way to know it was when there's a plan for how many units are you talking about, and then a traffic study would be as a result of that. I'm not taking your word that this was what was the discussion. I would think that would be the context for it.
But even there, the traffic study that was performed on behalf of Habitat did not take into account the safety of the residents. That was clear on cross-examination.
That's a matter for your appeal if you're making one. That is not for us to comment or say anything about. That is a matter of your decisions with regard to your appeal. You're a lawyer, you know exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, with that, I am going to close public comments. I'm going to take a 2-minute break. And we don't need a 2-minute break. Okay, we're back. We have one ordinance for hearing. It's safety. Madam Clerk, would you read the ordinance 19-3197?
An ordinance amending the code, Chapter 7, Traffic, Section 7-8, Parking, subsection 7-8.5, Parking time limited on certain streets, and subsection 7-8.7, Parking prohibited at all times on certain streets.
Thank you. Councilman Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. This ordinance, which was introduced at the last council meeting, is related to street parking on Lincoln Avenue, which intersects with Morris Avenue. The existing ordinance prohibits parking on the east side of the street. The ordinance being discussed today allows parking on both sides of the street with a 2-hour time limit between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. I move to open the hearing for this ordinance.
Second.
Okay, this hearing is now open. I'll ask if there are any questions or comments from members of council with regard to this ordinance. Mike?
Yeah, no, I think segueing from the presentation we had earlier about different zones, you know, people who do traffic down in that part of Morris Avenue, it's hard to find parking. And there's a lot of businesses that do a lot of drop-offs and things like that. And this ordinance is to specifically address that. It'll add some parking. It also will add a little drop-off area, which will increase safety for people who are using those businesses along Morris Avenue. So the other thing, the street is wide enough. It used to be a 2-way street. Now it's a 1-way street. So it has that added advantage. You can add the parking without really affecting traffic flow or line of sight or anything like that. So I think it's a good step to help both users and businesses and consumers down there.
Great, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I agree. Any other, Matt? Yes, please.
Yes, I just want to thank you, Greg, and the police department for putting this together, and thanks for that explanation. This is exactly what I'm talking about with that NBD, and I think that'll help a lot. I know that the dance studio around the corner has constant problems with drop-offs, and I know that the police have been there putting up bollards and everything else, so hopefully this helps with that, and hopefully we can publicize it somehow as well.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Anybody else? Okay, is there anybody member of the public that would like to comment on this ordinance? Okay, any further discussion? I will consider this hearing closed. Moving on for ordinances for final consideration, Madam Clerk, would you please read 19-3197?
An ordinance amending the code, Chapter 7, Traffic, Section 7-8, Parking, subsection 7-8.5, Parking time limited on certain streets, and subsection 7-8.7, Parking prohibited at all times on certain streets.
Okay, roll call, please.
Second?
Oh, second, sorry.
Second.
Well, actually, I
got a
should motion from Councilman Bartan.
Thank you, Council President.
Sorry.
Council President's lost it again.
This is like last week.
As was just discussed, this is a familiar ordinance. It adjusts parking on Lincoln Avenue, good for residents, shoppers, businesses, win-win-win. I move the council approve this ordinance.
Second.
Okay, now roll call.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Fox?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. McTiernan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Naidu?
Aye. Okay, we have one ordinance for introduction, but that's being pulled. So now we're moving on to resolutions. And I'd like to actually pull up a resolution that's further down in the agenda and address it first. And that is with regard to the capital projects, number 5. Councilwoman Fox.
Thank you, Council President. This is number 6584, and this resolution authorizes K&R Real Estate LLC to satisfy its affordable housing obligation by providing 1 unit of off-site affordable housing, as well as 6/10 of a unit in a cash payment to the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So this unit is a purchase and deed restriction of a 2-bedroom condominium unit at 412 Morris Avenue. The zoning board approved the development of 8 condominium units at 59 New England Avenue in November of last year. And under the city's zoning law, KNR is required to provide 20% affordable housing set aside, which in this case would be 1.6 units. So for the affordable housing obligation under an alternate mechanism, they're proposing the purchase of an existing market rate unit at another location in the community. And the Common Council has the discretion to allow for this alternate mechanism when it advances the goals and policies in the city's housing element and fair share plan. So I move this resolution.
I second.
Okay. What I think would be helpful is to have KNR's counsel, who's here, Bart Sheehan, to come up and give a few minutes of background. I think that would help everyone understand what we're addressing here. Bart?
Thank you, Mr. President, Mayor, Mr. Nadeau, members of council. For the record, my name is Bartholomew A. Sheehan, Jr. I'm appearing on behalf of the firm of Dempsey, Dempsey & Sheehan, attorneys for KNR Real Estate, LLC. KNR Real Estate is the recipient of an approval of a resolution memorializing the permission to construct 8 units of transitional housing at 59 New England Avenue. The affordable housing obligation, as Councilwoman Fox has indicated, is a 20% set aside, namely 1 unit plus a 0.6 fractional share. KNR petitions to satisfy the affordable housing obligation through alternative mechanism as provided by ordinance by providing 1 affordable housing unit off-site and the payment of a fractional share in the amount of $110,809.80. The reasons why the alternative mechanism advances the city housing element and fair share plan goal and policies is found in the following facts. The proposed site was created by combining land owned by the Holy Rosary Shrine with a lot owned previously by Christ Church. The resulting irregularly shaped lot has a grade change of 20 feet running from east to west to preserve the required isolation of the cloistered monastery and to accommodate the 20-foot grade change. The only place where an affordable unit could be placed was at the south side of the front building at the lower level. Such a unit would not be, as required, indistinguishable from the market units and would share exterior parking spaces with the market unit located above. It would not have the 2 means of access required for fire safety. It would not be handicapped accessible. The market unit above would lack a garage and would require 15 steps over a 15 to 20 foot distance. KNR has secured an off-site unit at 412 Morris Avenue that will be dedicated as a deed-restricted affordable unit as an alternative to the on-site unit at 59 New England Avenue. The unit so dedicated will comply with all of the affordable housing rules and regulations as applicable to the City of Summit. It is submitted that this alternative mechanism enhances and advances the city's goal and policy for its housing element and fair share plan in a far more effective manner than attempting to place the required unit on the site in a compromised and non-compliant manner. For those reasons, the applicant advances its petition and commends it to the favorable review and decision of this council. and I would be glad to respond to any questions that anybody might have. Mr. Carpa is here to assist me in that regard
Great.
to the extent necessary.
So I think the way we'll do it is just so that if there are members of the public who are interested also in asking questions, we'll first go through council questions, then we'll have members of the public ask questions or comments that they want to make to council or to your clients, Mr. Sheehan, and then we'll see if there's any further discussion, okay? I just want to make sure a couple of points. The unit at 412 Morris Avenue, from the exterior, that will be indistinguishable, correct, from every other unit, so you will not be able to tell which one's the affordable housing unit, correct?
That's correct, Mr.
Okay.
President.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, there is not only the one unit being addressed through this mechanism, but there's a 0.6 obligation. And your clients will be paying into the trust fund in addition to getting this unit, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you know how many bedrooms it is in this unit that is being proposed?
I believe that it is a two-bedroom unit. If I am misspeaking, Mr. Carper will correct me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, Marjorie.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. I had a couple of questions. One, the unit at 412 is going to be a for-sale unit for affordable housing, correct? Is
Yes.
that the plan?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And then going back to the original site on New England Avenue, I'm a little confused when you say that the affordable unit has to be in a particular place on the driveway, and why that particular unit has to be the affordable unit and not one of the others. I haven't seen the site, and there was nothing in our packet that showed us what the topography of the site was.
You know, when you have the site layout with the irregular lot created by the subdivision to preserve the privacy for the monastery, and you add to that the 20-foot grade change, the only way that there can be access to an affordable unit that is handicapped accessible would be to have it located at the lower level underneath the southerly unit in the front range. To place it anywhere else would make it inaccessible for handicapped access, and actually, the unit on the bottom that is proposed would also lack the second means of egress for fire safety.
So what you're saying then, just so I understand, is that none of these units that are being created would be handicapped accessible?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify just further on that point, is it the requirements of the affordable housing regulations that units need to have two ingress and egress points as well as being handicap accessible? Is that right?
I think that would be a fire code requirement, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else? Matt, yes. Oh, Mike. No, Matt, you go first. You raise hand first.
Oh. So one of the things we've been trying to do here on council is to press for more inclusionary affordable housing. You see the benefits, all the studies show that inclusionary affordable housing is better. So it seems like you found a way to keep going with inclusionary affordable housing even as you're pushing it off-site, right?
That's correct, sir.
Was that the goal? Is that what you were working to do?
Well, I think that, again, if I misspeak, Mr. Carper will correct me, that the process that was pursued was to work in combination with the Habitat for Humanity and to survey available units in the area in proximity to the locus in question, and to find a unit that conformed with the requirements of Habitat for Humanity. And this was the unit that came up that was affordable, that was available for affordable housing designation.
Okay. And if you were to build this unit on site, if you would find a way to do it, if we said you must put it on site, what would be the plan? Would there be a plan?
The civil engineering applicable to the site makes it virtually impossible to provide an affordable housing unit on site. because of the grade change and the configuration of the subdivision dictated by the need to provide the privacy for the cloistered monastery.
Right, because none of the market rate units are going to be handicap accessible.
They cannot be because of
Cannot be.
the management of the grade change.
Right, I know that I'm repetitive to what Councilwoman Fox said, but thank
Yeah,
you for
good
clarifying
point.
that.
Okay. Mike, you're up. Just to clarify, so the unit that is being proposed to be purchased on Morris Avenue, is that handicapped accessible? Or is there a difference for existing structures versus new construction?
I think I would have to defer to Mr. Corpo on that, if I may.
Matt, you want to come up?
You understand the question?
Yes, I understand the question. So it is my understanding, based on advice from our architect and engineer, that essentially the existing structure is grandfathered. So therefore, the requirements of new construction are not that of the proposed condo.
All right, so let me just get this straight. So because it's grandfathered, so we're going to end up with a unit of affordable housing that's not handicapped accessible.
Correct.
So we're being asked to approve that versus the other option that, so is it impossible to, given the current location, there's no way around building a unit on the existing site that also is not handicap accessible, that would meet the requirements of being an affordable housing unit?
So I think, as Bart had previously stated, I think that the single unit that we could build that would work for handicap accessibility also does not meet other affordable housing requirements that.
Like egress?
Egress, but similar to the one that we're proposing, the alternative, but one that is very different than what we're proposing is that it's distinguishable among the rest, whereas the one that we're proposing is not. And I do think, I'd have to defer to our architect, but it's my understanding, working with our architect and also Habitat for Humanity, that they would be able to deed restrict this unit that we're proposing, and we would not be able to deed restrict the unit that would be new construction.
You would not be able to deed restrict.
Why would that be?
Why?
Given the points that Bart had laid out.
You wouldn't be able to provide a compliant, accessible unit for handicap, for affordable housing in the new construction, so that there would be no affordable unit capable of being created on the site at 59 New England Avenue.
So let me just make sure I understand it. So the reason that you can't build a affordable housing unit is that it would not be you would not be able to get a deed restriction because it would not be compliant, and the reason it would not be compliant is because it would not be able to be handicapped accessible.
And it would not comply with the fire code.
Fire
yes.
code, okay, those two reasons.
Yeah.
But you could do it at 412 because it's grandfathered in, and so therefore, even though it has a similar issue with regard to handicap accessibility, may not have an issue with the fire code because presumably it passed the fire code, otherwise it might be constructed, you still could get a deed restriction on that for affordable housing. Yes?
Accurately stated.
Yes, okay. Anyone else?
Well,
Oh, Steve.
I guess, it drives me to ask the question is, there's no other properties in this town that we could get a handicap accessible with two egresses that we can make affordable housing? I mean, I personally feel like kick it back to the drawing board and find another property.
Well, there are none that are available according to the search that Mr. Corpa and Habitat for Humanity engaged in, Mr. Bowen.
I mean, one thing I will say, and this is, I guess it's not even necessarily to Steve's point because you have already looked, but I think one of the benefits of having this particular site is the fact that it is not that far away from where the proposed building is. And one of the issues that we have come across, as people know here, is that sometimes people in different parts of the town feel as if there's construction in one part of the town, but yet they're bearing the brunt of having affordable housing in their section of town. And this doesn't do that. This is basically within a close proximity to where the housing is. It is not exactly there, granted. It's not in, and I believe you guys looked at there are apartment complexes right adjacent to where you are, correct? And you did look at those apartment complexes to see whether there was availability, correct? Am I right? And you did not find any? Okay. So then you just increased the radius of your search until you found something at least in nearer proximity. It's not right there, we understand that. Oh, Mike, go ahead.
I guess I'd just like to know a little bit more about the parameters of that search. Was the overriding parameter that, one, you could get it deed restricted, and two, proximity? I just don't know what, if you looked at the entire town, for instance, I'm not suggesting that that is the way you should run your search, but I would assume that there'd be something out there that would be handicap accessible and, have egresses and things like that.
Yeah, I don't.
But so that's my question.
I think that the answer to that question is best given by Mr. Carpa, but if you bought a flat, two-bedroom flat in the units on Summit Avenue that were constructed at the old medical group site, it would be a handicapped accessible two-bedroom unit, but it wouldn't be in the area located where the property in question is located.
So that's my question. So was proximity to the site one of the driving criteria for your search?
Why don't we let Mr. Carpa answer it?
Yes, that's right. So when we realized that we could not provide this on-site, we looked to alternatives, and we also started reaching out to nonprofits that specialize in affordable housing to try to see if we can leverage something there. So our kind of overarching themes as we looked to identify an alternative, really top of list was proximity to our site. Also, the ability to deed restrict affordable was right up there. And then also working with Habitat for Humanity, we needed to make sure that it conformed to their requirements. So as we went looking at different options, they came with us, we toured units, they had inspectors go out and take a look at each site that we were proposing, and this is where we landed.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
So the two issues that are preventing the affordable unit from being on the site are the grade and the proximity to the monastery, right? Can you explain that piece of it a little more, just so we can have a better understanding of what sort of accommodations are
Yes.
being made there? Thank
Yeah.
you.
The property in question is cobbled together from two pieces of property. One is the portion of approximately 15,000 square feet of square feet of lot area from the monastery, and there is a 2,100 square foot lot realignment that creates an extensive buffer between the monastery and the rear yard of the property in question. The resulting lot preserves the privacy required for the monastery, and at the same time translates into an 11-foot grade differential between the entrance to the condominium unit and the garage level at the rear of the condominium unit. Because of the narrowness of the lot created by the privacy requirements of the monastery, there is not sufficient range to create a ramp for handicapped accessibility for the rear unit. The grade change has to be accommodated to a greater extent the closer you come to the western or front end of the property along New England Avenue, with concomitant problems for the affordable housing unit.
Okay, so just to clarify just a little bit more, so you own the land that you're considering the buffer right, between what would be the development and the monastery, right?
Say that again, please.
So you own the land that you're considering the buffer zone, the
Yes.
roughly? Okay. But
And
it's,
that's
but it's,
going to be conveyed
Okay.
to the monastery.
correct. Okay, so that's what I was trying to get at.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, anybody else on council? Matt, yes.
Thank you, Council President. So this property is all owned by the monastery, or part of it's owned by Christ Church?
Well,
Or was the
portion-
transfer?
It's a combination of the property that was owned by Christ Church, which was a single-family lot, and the 15,000 square feet plus of the monastery property added to it to the north side. The rear yard of the existing single-family residential property formerly owned by Christ Church has approximately 20 feet or 2,168 square feet carved off the back of it and added to the monastery property for the privacy. So it's a subdivision with a lot realignment.
Right, right. I bring it up because Christ Church is a member of the Interfaith Council that really pushed us to work on inclusionary affordable housing.
Mhm.
And so you see, it's frustrating.
Nora, please.
I can understand it's frustrating, but it is a property that is fairly close in location. But so you have the buffer, I would think, because there's an agreement. I mean, that's one of the reasons that the monastery agreed to go along with this, that you're
Exactly.
providing the buffer for them.
Exactly right.
Right. Oh, Marjorie?
Is there any other engineering or any other solution to the handicapped access? For example, an elevator in that accessible, in the affordable unit? Or is it the access point that's the accessibility issue?
There are no elevators in any of the units.
But would the provision of an elevator in the affordable unit solve the problem so you could keep it on site?
Well, if it was serviced by an elevator, it would no longer be an affordable unit.
Because?
The cost of the elevator to put it in.
I see, okay.
Plus, there's also the lack of egress, two egress points.
Right, okay.
Okay. I want to get the public, in case there are folks here, I don't want to be sitting all night. Leslie, come on up. Bart, why don't you and Matt just stay to the side in case the questions are relevant to you guys? Okay.
Leslie Salcedo. I actually live at 412 Morris Avenue, Unit 50. Today's the first day I'm hearing about this. We were not notified of any of this except for what was in the agenda. So I have a couple of questions, I guess. What does that mean when you say you're going to turn one of our units, and there's 57 of them, into affordable housing? I mean, does that mean the Summit Council, or does Summit have any say in what happens to the units, or what does that mean?
So,
Would be subject to all of the affordable housing obligations with a deed restriction for qualified sale. For sale to a person who's qualified, and the deed restriction would be for 30 years.
So let's try to get specific. Matt or Bart, do you guys know the specific unit at 412 that
It's
you're
12.
considering?
It's Unit
Unit
12.
12, okay.
Yes.
Right, okay. So effectively, instead of being a market rate unit, and you guys can correct me if I get this wrong, you would have a unit that would be marketed through Habitat for Humanity for people who would qualify, I guess, and there are different qualifications, right? So there's low and moderate, and so there's different gradations, or low, and then moderate qualifications. I don't know if you guys already know what that tier it's going to be, but it falls into one of those tiers, obviously, and then the person would have to qualify, I assume, through Habitat financially to be able to afford to purchase the unit. So it probably is a moderate income housing rather than low income housing, because the person has to have income in order to qualify for to purchase it.
So then I guess my question is the value of my unit now, how is that going to be affected?
What is the value of your
My
unit?
unit,
Yeah.
because I live there as well. What happens to my unit?
I think your unit would be be subject to market forces and would not be affected by the affordable housing.
Right, because your unit does not have a deed
Okay.
restriction that says it has to be sold as affordable housing. I mean, I know, for instance, at the Parmley Place Apartments, they have one, out of the 24 apartments, one is affordable housing, two is affordable housing, two are affordable housing. And all of the other units that are condominium units that are that were initially bought by residents, and now if they're trying to sell them, the value of all those apartments is continuing to go up and up and
Okay,
up.
so it won't be affected.
It doesn't have an impact, no.
Yeah, and I think also there was Euclid Place, there's a one unit put in Euclid Place. I think the ones that are being built on Passaic and Springfield Avenue, those have 2 units there. So this is not unusual to have within a large development. For all we know, there are other affordable housing units at 412, and we just don't know about it.
Okay. The other question I have is, because we always have units that are up for sale. Do you guys have any envision that you're going to buy more of these and turn them into affordable housing? No, this is the only one you guys will be doing right now.
They only have a 1-unit obligation.
Okay.
So they're not, believe me, I don't think they want to be doing this right here, right now either. So this is the 1 unit that they need to purchase. And as they explained to us, through the questioning, they were looking, obviously, through the city to try to figure out where they could fit that obligation, other than on their own property for the reasons that they cannot do it on theirs, for the explanation that they gave.
Okay. Yeah, no, again, today was the first day I was actually hearing
Understood.
about it, so I
Fair
just
enough.
had questions.
Absolutely. No, this is the time to ask, so feel free to ask questions, absolutely.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, quite welcome. Any others? Anybody else in the public? Okay, any further discussion by members of council? I will say, right, so our general rule is, and one that we absolutely, I believe the most of us believe in, is to have inclusionary in the development that's being constructed. That being said, these are unusual circumstances, and for those reasons, I'm in favor of this. But I don't want the impression to be given that if developers come and say, because we have a lot of development projects that are possibly in the pipeline that will happen. And I don't want people to somehow get the impression, oh, well, if I go to, if I can't somehow figure it out, can come to council and they'll give me relief. That's not the case. This, as these guys will tell you, this has taken them some time. It has taken them probably more time than they probably wish, because I think they would have rather started the development earlier and moved on. So I don't think this is an easy process. I don't think it's beneficial to the developer, and certainly one that requires much more scrutiny and intensity than if they had just built it there. That being said, I think this is something that they've thought through. It overall is a benefit to us. We get the 0.6, we get more than $106,000, and we get a 2-bedroom unit for affordable housing. That increases the amount of affordable housing stock, which is a good thing. Mike?
Yeah, just thank you, Council President. Just to add, I agree with Council President Naidu's, I guess, summation that, inclusionary affordable housing is certainly the way I would think that these projects should start and be focused on. That being said, obviously there are circumstances that make that difficult, and in this instance it sounds extremely difficult to actually follow through on. So, but I think as a rule, while this governing body has the ability to approve off-site affordable housing, it should be the exception and not the rule. That being said, and I also, just another point, this is cobbling together some different properties. One beneficiary of this is the monastery, who is building, they're doing a lot of work on the monastery, and the nuns do need money. So this does, I guess, tie into the fact that they're selling this property for a reason, and their reason is because they are raising money to build that new building on the front side of their church. So, like I said, I am sensitive to approving things that are non-inclusionary, certainly for residents. They have questions, and they're valid questions, and they should be answered. But I think in this instance, you know, we talked about the zoning board being a, you know, an independent body. They are experts in these things. I think they can look at plans a lot better than certainly I can around whether or not this would have worked, and they vetted this and kind of asked us to kind of improve the work they've done. So from that perspective, I guess, you know, I would support this as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled agenda and try to work through this. So we have two on law and labor. Councilman Bowman. Sure. Just hold on a second. Guys, if you wouldn't mind just taking your conversations outside, appreciate it.
Okay, okay, law, resolution number 1, ID 6572, is to appoint the city treasurer and slash CFO, chief financial officer. As we discussed in closed session this evening, the city of Summit is announcing that Tammy Baldwin has accepted and cleared all the pre-employment requirements. Ms. Baldwin's experience is she's been an assistant business administrator for the Township of Union and also CFO, sorry, not CEO, CFO of Borough of Chatham. She's a local who has a well-documented knowledge of the area, and she has been, I think she will be a good addition to our finance team. Not that we were going to miss Marge, we're definitely going to miss Marge, but, you know, I move we accept this resolution.
And I second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of council? I just want to thank Steve and Beth for vetting and interviewing the applicants, and I concur that I think she will fit very well into Summit and look forward and to her, seeing her, but we will certainly miss March. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, law and labor number 2,
Okay,
Steve.
ID 6582, thank you, Council President, is to declare a vacancy in the Department of Community Services Division of Public Works. One of our employees has resigned effective August 1st to pursue some advanced career opportunities, and as we discussed in closed session, I move we accept this resolution.
Thank you.
Oh, I second.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Any comments or questions from members of council? Oh, I forgot to ask. Any comments or questions from members of the public?
I think we've killed the
choir.
Yeah, I know, but
Nobody left.
I go through it just in case there is one member of the public still sitting out there. Mr. O'Sullivan sitting there quietly.
Everyone's there and has to be there.
Any further discussion by members of council? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, safety and health, we have one, Councilman Bartan.
Thank you, Council President. Resolution number 6507 authorizes the purchase through the state contract of self-contained breathing apparatus replacements at the cost of $167,876.30. These breathing systems are critical for fighting fires and have a lifespan of 10 years. They are usually purchased over the course of 3 years, but by purchasing a larger number over the last 2 years, we're getting a lower price and saving approximately $40,000. I move this resolution for approval.
Second.
Okay, any comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have 3 from community programs. Number 1, Councilman Gould.
Thank you, Council President. ID number 6542 is to award a bid for the Summit Family Aquatic Center pool resurfacing project for $222,000. In late June, the Department of Community Programs put out, advertised for competitive bids. They got 3 different bids, and Allstate Technology was the lowest. I believe, Mr. Ozorowski, correct me if I'm wrong, but we heard good things about Allstate, and we've seen some of their work before.
Correct.
Yes. And this is the work that we had hoped to do last year, but with the completion of the community center and everything, we pushed it till the end of this season, and I'm excited that it's going to be done. So I move that we accept this resolution.
Second.
Okay. Any comments or questions from members of council? This is something that was already in our capital budget, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Any questions or comments from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Community programs number 2, Councilman Gould.
Thank you, Council President. This is ID number 6585, authorize the submission of for the Union County Kids Recreation Trust Fund 2019 grant application. We apply for this every year. We've gotten some nice awards from the county. Thank you to our wonderful freeholders before. And this time, we're trying to, seeking matching funds for improvement of the track at Tatlock Field. We do realize we're asking for $95,000. We do realize that there are lots of needs within community programs for playgrounds, things like that, and we have capital projections to address those, but we think that the track is the most urgent because it's 10 plus years old. 13 years old, supposed to last 8, I believe, and you know, our wonderful sprinters are complaining about it. So I move that we adopt this resolution.
Second.
Okay. I have run around that track. I do know that, yes, it needs some repair. I will say, though, we have done a number of things at Tatlock over the last couple of years that have really changed so many different aspects. I think this is one of the last things probably on the Tatlock infrastructure that needs to be done. So, you know, kudos to the Department of Community Programs for their efforts and for prior councils for approving it. Any further comments from members of council? Marjorie, please.
I'd like to support this, this resolution. I have 2 runners, Summit High School runners, so I have heard about the conditions of the track, and I think this will be very appreciated for the whole track. The track team is actually, track and cross country are amongst the largest sports at Summit High School. The boys team alone in the fall, the cross-country team is about 80 boys. In the spring, there are over 150 kids running track. So that is a lot of kids using those facilities, in addition to just members of the public who use them. So there'll be a lot of happy people out there, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, capital community programs number 3, Councilman Gould.
Thank you, Council President. This is ID 6526 to authorize a renewal of an agreement for the post office lot leases of 13 spaces that they've been using. The U.S. Postal Service, a federal agency, has been in arrears, and I believe that part of that is because they know that we're going to redevelop in that zone eventually, and they don't know what their future is. So Rita McNanny and her team have worked, and Michael, City Administrator Rogers, have worked out a plan where they're going to be month to month, and they're going to be catch up with their late payments, and then we can move forward happily with them. So I move that we adopt this resolution.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of council? Mike?
Yeah. My question is, how has the post, why were they in arrears? I mean, given, they just can't not pay us.
Apparently they can.
Well, they can, but then why don't we kick them off the parking lot?
Good question. Rita, come on up.
While she's walking up, I will say that we did discuss kicking them out of the parking lot, but we thought that diplomacy might be a better route.
Oh, we might as well get the rent. So we need
Yes,
Yes, you need it.
unbeknownst to us, they just decided to stop paying us. Once we confirmed that, I made multiple requests to them for payment. Going unanswered for months, we then said if we didn't receive, through advice of the city attorney, if we did not receive payment, they would have been, we would have ceased them from utilizing the lot. That got them into action. They sent the contract back to us. I had another conversation stating that it's coming to council for approval this evening. They're assuring me by Monday the check for the arrears will be sent to us.
Thank you. I mean, I share the same frustration because I think in any normal situation, if you are the landlord and the tenant has not paid you for months on end, you do not go ahead and renew a lease.
Yeah, my suggestion would be, how about they pay us, and then we'll renew the lease?
Michael, would you like to address that, please?
They needed authorization to pay, and the existing contract was expired, and therefore they didn't have the authorization. So it was a procedural nightmare for us. They would not send us a check without the renewal of this agreement. And
so
we
that's
just
the-
changed the terms. That was really the issue.
So we haven't, so we've been they've been so that's different. So they've been operating without a lease for all
Outside of
this.
that, yes, it expired at the end of last year. We've been trying to negotiate, and there was a lack of response for some months. But we changed the terms of this agreement, so it was an amendment to the existing agreement, which went to from a term to a 30-day out in the notification, given what we had planned there. So it took many months to go through this process. They didn't have the people we were dealing with at the post office in DC or Virginia, where we were dealing in North Carolina, didn't have the legal authorization internally to authorize payment to us until we got the terms agreed upon. So, because it was a change of the existing agreement.
Right. And I guess my last question is, we have heard at almost every single council meeting about parking and what a valuable commodity it is. Why are we not raising the rent on these lots to the post office? We've kept them the same for year after year after year. What is the rationale for that?
There has never been a request to me to raise the rates, and also the rates are based on what the current rates by ordinance are for monthly parking. So then council would have to decide if they wanted to raise the rates. Right now, they pay for monthly parking and then overnight parking, based upon what the council has set in the ordinance. So it's $80 per month per vehicle that is in our current ordinance. So my understanding is, unless council, and I don't know if council can, because it would be a special rate. I don't know if that's even
The lease is
possible.
based on the rates that you have established in the ordinance for anybody that's doing this.
That's correct.
You'd have to amend the ordinance to reflect different rates.
For everybody.
Everybody.
Right. That was my
I don't know if
understanding.
the U.S. Postal Service would say, wait a second, you charging us more or the Postal Service? But the whole basis is you're using the rates that you've established as a common council. If you raise the rates across the board, you then could charge them higher rate in the lease.
And if I want to, when we initially negotiated this contract, they did not want to pay the daily rate. And we insisted, I insisted that they do, because while they're not there all day, they have to be out by 9:30, they're allowed back in after 3 p.m. They're still taking up parking spaces portion of the day. So we insisted that they pay the full day rate, which they did not want to do, but they agreed to in order to get the parking.
Do they use up all the parking spaces? The ones that we get?
Do they use all 13?
Do they use all
Yes.
13?
Yes, they do.
And can I ask, who parks, do people park in those 13 spaces between 9:30 and 3?
There are times, yes, that they exceed the requirement of 9:30 a.m. We constantly go in and we speak to the postmaster over the years.
I think
I
the
mean,
first
when
question is
they're
different.
gone.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, the employees that are coming in, that stores don't open until 10.
Right.
And that's the issue that we have. That's why we said 9:30. Sometimes the mail deliveries that they're sorting come in late from, let's say, Kearney, this main sorting.
Right.
So they don't get out in time. We've ticketed federal vehicles. We don't know if those tickets are ever paid, but we do our best to make sure that they're out by 9:30.
Okay, Marjorie.
So I'm a little unclear about, when you say parking is available at the site from 3 PM to 9:30 PM. That's a-
9:30 a.m.
Okay, well, the resolution says
Oh, I'm sorry.
9:30 PM.
I didn't write.
Okay, so
It needs to be
who's,
9:30 a.m.
parking is available at the site from 3 PM to 9:30 AM. For whom?
The postal trucks, they're
Postal
delivering.
trucks are there from 3 PM to 9:30 AM.
Correct.
And at 9:30 AM, they leave until 3, there is,
It's usually later than 3, but there are some that, get done with their
but the public can use the site from 9:30.
downtown employees can park there.
From 9 to 3.
9:30, once they have the spot, in other words, they're not assigned spaces.
I understand that.
Okay, so again, it's 9:30, and then the employee can park there as long as they want, as long as they're out by 2 a.m.
Okay.
Because it's an employee parking lot.
It's not a public parking lot.
It's not a commuter lot, it's not a
Right.
resident
And
parking
these
lot.
are
It's
not
a
designated
It's
spaces.
Correct.
postal employees and
And employees.
Yeah.
And
I
downtown
parked there
employees.
once and was promptly ticketed.
Yes, well, there you go. That's how the system works. It's good.
There's special favors for council
Yeah,
members.
Greg?
So I think, you know, I'm in favor of this resolution as long as we're very closely monitoring the situation. And if we should find ourselves again not being paid, I think we should very promptly cancel the agreement, and then 30 days after, we would, you know, have to
And again, even with the
talk about what's
months in the
next.
rears, there's been multiple emails that went unanswered. So we have been on top of it, but they neglected to respond.
Okay.
Thank you, Council President. I feel a bit badly. I feel after Michael Rogers spoke, I feel like I mischaracterized it because it seems like I understand red tape. They can't pay without an agreement, their lack of response to our inquiries was unacceptable. But I understand it a lot better now.
But notwithstanding that, to be fair, I think in any other, I've had situations where represented landlords whose tenants have, we're still negotiating a contract, a lease. The tenant who's staying there is still paying. They don't go, oh, guess what? Because I don't have an agreement, I don't get to pay. No, I mean, typically, and we all understand why we need to do what we need to do probably here tonight, but it doesn't make us happy about what we're doing.
Yeah. We need
And
to
I
drain
agree
the
with
swamp.
Greg, absolutely. We should monitor the situation closely. It should not go on for 6, 7 months and then say, okay, now we need an agreement. We need 1 month later, they don't get their check on Monday, by the end of this month, that's it. You know, let's start talking here about what's going on, because that's not right.
I totally agree with you. And again, not for my lack of not trying.
We're not suggesting,
And-
Rita, we're not suggesting
And I
that
also stated
anybody
when
on
they
our-
wanted
we're
to know
not-
about this agreement, whether it was approved yet or not. My last sentence was, I'm more concerned about when the city of Summit's going to obtain the payment in arrears. And I was assured that the latest it will go out is Monday.
Okay,
And I'll be
very good.
monitoring it.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? Beth, I'm sorry.
Just as a point of order, are we approving the resolution as amended to 3 PM to 9:30 AM? Because right now it says 9:30
Yes, we would
9:30
have
PM.
to, right? And that's a ministerial
That's
change.
ministerial, you can do that.
Okay, so yes, as amended. Thank you, Beth. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? So we're approving it as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're moving on to capital projects where we have 6 of them now. So capital projects number 1, Councilwoman Fox.
Thank you, Council President. Capital Projects Resolution Number 1, ID 6552. This resolution authorizes the city to submit a grant application and execute a grant agreement with the NJDOT Bikeways Program for the Summit Parkline Phase 1. This project will create access for bicyclists and pedestrians, and the major chunk of the expense here is sidewalks on Morris Avenue from Denman Place to Walnut Street, and on Broad Street from Denman Place to Upper Overlook Road, so it completes the sidewalk network in that neighborhood. It also includes funding for improvements to Phase 1 of the park line. And this grant is in the amount of $1 million and does not require matching funds. I move this resolution.
I second.
Okay, any comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, number 2, Councilwoman Fox.
Thank you, Council President. Capital Projects 26594. This resolution approves and supports the application of the Reeves Reed Arboretum, and they're applying for a Preserve Union County 2019 grant to fund repairs and restoration to the historic stone stairs by the Wisner House. And there are photos in the packet showing the deterioration of the stairs. This grant amount is for $10,100, and the Arboretum will fund the 50% match. We're required to approve this grant submission because the city owns the Arboretum property. We talk about it a lot, but the Arboretum is a wonderful asset to the community, and I enthusiastically support this resolution.
Second.
Any comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on, number 3, Marjorie.
Okay, 6583, authorizing the online auction of 17 unneeded city vehicles through Municipid. This is the second equipment sale through our state contract with Municipid, and this is an effective way to recoup funds from unneeded equipment. I move this resolution.
I second.
Any comments or questions from members of council? Mike?
Probably for Paul, do we have any guesstimate on what we're kind of expecting from this auction?
Oh, come on up.
Through you, Council President, no, actually.
Could be anything.
I don't know.
By sitting down.
Some of this equipment is just, it's old equipment, and, you know, we put a real low reserve on it and just, you know, try to move it on. So my answer, no, but I can tell you that the last auction, we received about $70,000, the one you approved a couple meetings ago.
There's a green machine sweeper you can buy. There's lots of good stuff.
That's good. The
A lot
90
of Toros there.
Does the
Lots of
99
Toros.
Bobcat run? That's my question.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff.
Bobcat?
The
You can have an
1999
offline
Bobcat, does it
conversation
run?
with Matt on what
Yeah,
he
we'll
purchased.
talk about that at CAP.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It runs.
Okay. All right.
Chop, chop.
Okay.
Any other
Okay,
comments or
sorry.
questions? Okay, any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on, capital projects number 4.
Okay, 6550. This resolution authorizes the replacement of 2 roofs at the Department of Public Works at Chatham Road facility, and this is through the Educational Services Commission of New Jersey Cooperative Pricing System. And these roofs are different in that they are made of rubber, so we had to go through this cooperative to get a good price on them. So it's the rubber roofs of the main building and the garbage and trash building. These roofs are pretty old, possibly even about 50 years old, and are in need of replacement because they're leaking. This project is funded by $90,000 from the 2019 capital budget, and the remainder is from the 2015 sewer utility budget. I move this resolution.
I second.
Any comments or questions from members of council?
Steve?
Is this for the roof, or is there any structural damage underneath that is going to require any repairs?
Through you, Council President, I don't believe there's any structural, but it does include 2 layers of, if you look, there's 18,000 square feet of old roofing that needs to be removed. So there's 2 layers, and then 9,000 square feet of new rubber roofing to be installed.
So if we get another 50 years?
I'm hoping.
Okay.
It won't be my problem.
still
at
be here.
50. In fact, I won't be around to see it.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, any comments or questions from members of the public? Further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've done 5, number 6.
Okay, thank you, Council President. 6593, this resolution authorizes the execution of an agreement with Union County for certain community development block grants. This is a routine agreement that we execute every year to qualify for funding. I move this resolution.
I second.
Any comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Number 7, Marjorie.
Last but not least, 6567. This resolution authorizes the submission of Greening Union County grant application to fund the planting of 100 trees. The grant requires a 50% match of $15,000, and this will be included in the 2020 capital budget if we get this grant. The resolution says 2019, so we'll have to adopt it as amended. And we have received this grant for several years now, and it helps us to maintain our tree canopy by planting new trees every year. I move this resolution.
I second.
Okay, any comments or questions from members of council? Matt?
I just want to say that I appreciate you, Mr. Director Cascades, I appreciate you upping the number from last year, and I appreciate the hand-picked variety of trees. Thank you.
Okay. I will say I appreciate also the increase in the number of trees. I think it's also consistent with our now recently adopted tree management plan, which we did a couple of council meetings ago. The only thing, as everyone knows, here is my big bugaboo about planting native trees. And I understand that we shouldn't have the same variety of native trees because of, one disease kills all the native trees. But what I would say is got a couple of trees here that, from their name and title and origin, seem like they're from different areas of the world, which is nice for those areas of the world. But native trees help native fauna, right? I mean, we have a whole bunch of species that are dependent upon native trees that exist. And so I would say, let's look at this again, if we can, between now and when we get the planting, if we get the money, and that'd be great. Let's look at that list. Let's see if we can somehow figure out how to do, as I would say, buy New Jersey here. Okay, trees. Marjorie.
Paul.
This is what happens when we're at 11:05.
You and I spoke about how these trees were selected and why these and not native species, and I think you were going to get an answer from John Linson about why.
Through you, Council President. 40% of the trees that are on the list are native. So 40 of the 100 are native. The others were selected through the New Jersey Shade Tree Commission. Actually puts out each year a list of trees that communities should buy or purchase in the event there's locations that have environmental challenges, small planting beds, lots of asphalt, parking lots, things of that nature. So the remainder of the trees that our city forester selected did come off of that list. The New Jersey Shade Tree Federation list for planting of trees that aren't native. So he did use that guideline to choose these trees.
I totally appreciate that. I understand that. I think we could maybe, that list is pretty broad. There's a lot of trees on that list. We could look at it maybe a little bit more. I think we could find a few more native trees there. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, it's 11 o'clock. We can move on from trees. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in, oh, wait.
What is native, really? What is native, really? We live in a global world.
We have a tree expert the city pays. I think we should respect his list.
Okay. I will not argue this point. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any council member comments or new business that they would like to discuss? Going once. Mike?
I know it's late, but I do want to say this because the Madam Mayor mentioned about National Night Out earlier this, 4 or 5 hours ago. And I just want to say there was some stuff going around the news today that I looked at, and I wanted to be sick about how police officers were treated in New York City. And I think it highlights just how our police department has been at the forefront of community engagement now for many, many years. And I know Officer Tarantino was a part of that too. But when I see something like that, I just shake my head and I go, what is going on out there? And I think it's important to differentiate that the way our police department has always looked at engaging with the community and building that kind of mutual respect with the community. It's important because it doesn't happen everywhere, as we've seen on, on TV and social media and stuff. So I just want to congratulate the police department for being at the forefront of that. And also, I think it's important for elected officials to continue to support not just our police, but our first responders in everything, because what they do, is incredibly important to the safety and well-being of our community. And I just had to say something because what I saw today sickened me.
Okay.
I just want to jump on that. Thank you for saying that. And it reminded me that Monday, was the first day of the first week of the Police Youth Academy. And I came in here and spoke to the kids. There were 6 kids in each row, so 30 kids. They were so enthusiastic, and we had 6 police officers who were training them, and the kids were just so pumped. And so their graduation, if anyone's around, is Friday night at 7 o'clock, and then next week is the second week. It's a great experience, and I think it's not just, it's great for the kids, but the officers really like it too. And then the other thing is that Chief Weck has started is going to hold a program, it's your idea of, for self-defense for young women. And you would thought initially if you would, like August 8th or something, I think, 7th or 8th, maybe 5 or 6 ninth grade girls and up would be coming. There are over 50 young people, young women signed up for this. So,
Wow.
you know, that's just a great, that's also a testament to how much trust our people in the community have in the department. So I want to appreciate all of the first responders, the fire, of course, and EMS. But yeah, I think National Night Out's a great night, and you know, bring kids, and it's really a great night to say, and to have that special moment of blessing the badges is really cool too. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you,
for bringing
Nora.
that up.
Sorry.
Hold on a second, Greg first.
Okay, so I'll heap on just a little bit more love, just to say that, you know, the communities that have a better relationship with the police are just safer. That's, the statistics are there. So the other thing I want to say is tomorrow night, Wednesday, July 24th, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. in Bryant Park, near the intersection of Bryant Parkway and Edison Drive, there's going to be a community meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss motor vehicle traffic patterns in the neighborhood and present proposed options to help reduce vehicle speeds and cut through traffic in the area. It should be clear that this body is not taking any action on those things at this time. It's just to present what has been discussed to the public and get feedback. That's it for me.
Thank you, Greg.
Rain location?
The rain location is the community center.
Oh, okay.
Not going to rain, though.
Not going to rain. Going to be beautiful.
Matt, you're next.
Oh, I was just going to say, you should have Lieutenant Richel be the cop that gets dunked, because he's the head of the traffic unit, right? Give some people the opportunity to get some. Okay. Thank you, Chief Weck.
Chief, just point out that it was only
idea.
Councilman Gould's suggestion.
Yes.
Nobody else is on this.
That's fun for everybody.
Okay, just so that's clear, none of us are suggesting.
Fun for everybody.
Exactly. Steve, you're up.
I got a non-police one. Although we do appreciate the police. I'm just giving a shout out. Does everyone know that we had a Wimbledon finalist that lives in our town?
No.
No, we do. Alexa Knoll, who went to the finals in the girls tennis junior.
Doubles?
No,
Singles.
Wow.
Oh. So this young lady is a 16-year-old who doesn't spend a lot of time here in Summit.
She's in Wimbledon.
No, and she is in the process of qualifying for or she's already qualified for the U.S. Open, but now she's trying to, in the junior level, and now she's out in San Diego attempting to qualify for the professional level. So she's
That's
quite
great.
the.
She's going to
Wow.
the Olympics?
Well, you know, I mean, it's still all part of the process.
Right, right.
But she's a nice young lady who, just give her a little shout out.
What's
That's very
Alexa?
No, she
And-
lives on Pine Grove, right around the corner from me.
So it's in Bradenton, probably.
No,
No,
she's
well-
right.
Okay, all right, guys. Okay, anybody else? Okay, with that, I will say, for those who are still awake and watching us, we do not meet in August, so everybody gets a break. The next time we reconvene will be September 3rd. So everyone have an enjoyable rest of the summer. Happy Labor Day. See you on September 3rd. Good night. Oh, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, now we're adjourned. There we go.
Marge, your chair is